Chapter 551. Guan versus the Celestial Spirit God. Hearing the words of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, the Immortal Seeker's expression turned ugly, anger apparent in his eyes. Why have you chosen to be born at this time? The Immortal Seeker looked up at the figure of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable and asked, suppressing his rage, knowing now was not the time for petty calculations. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable did not answer, but instead turned to gaze toward the Celestial Spirit Great World, his eyes filled with profound meaning. At the same time, a brilliant light appeared from the depths of the universe. It was the figure of the Celestial Spirit God holding the Celestial Tao Divine Axe, stepping on the Tao rules. Every step he took, ripples spread throughout the cosmic space. Under his steps, the universe seemed ephemeral, ready to vanish at any moment. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable turned back, refocusing his gaze on the Celestial Spirit God. He raised his right hand, palm facing upwards, and gold flames spontaneously appeared and rapidly coalesced into a great cauldron, growing larger continuously until it dwarfed his own form. Above the cauldron, a vortex with stars scattered within, breathtakingly beautiful, resembling the most mystical secret realm, brimming with allure. The moment the cauldron appeared, all beings felt as if their strength was being siphoned away. Countless fell paralyzed to the ground, those flying cultivators and demons crashing into oceans and between mountains. All at once, the Celestial Spirit Great World fell silent. Inside the palace, Jiang Qiong lay weak on the staircase, looking toward the outside of the grand doors, her face revealing a look of despair. Wuxia World. Sight Wuxia World. Sight. Koshi felt her mana and chi power being drawn out in an instant, even her divine sense disappearing without a trace. Her Tao practice accumulated over nearly 10,000 years. How could this be? She couldn't fathom what she was experiencing. And what kind of being was behind this? Suddenly, her peripheral vision caught another pair of feet beside her. Her pupils dilated sharply as she was about to look up. A hand grasped her forearm. Endless mana poured into her, revitalizing her strength rapidly. Feeling this mana, Jiang Qiong didn't need to see the person to instantly let her guard down. She looked up with a smile on her face. It really is you, Jiang Qiong said softly, her expression somewhat infatuated. Guan pulled her to her feet and asked with a smile. Do you know why your mana disappeared? Jiang Qiong leaned on him. Why? Because the mana you cultivated and you yourself are creatures of great heaven and earth. For great heaven and earth to reclaim everything from you. It's as easy as turning over one's hand. Guan said with a helpless smile, feeling her body against his. At such a time, this guy was still making his moves. Hearing this, Jiang Qiong frowned, straightened up, and asked, Great heaven and earth? Is great heaven and earth punishing us now? What did we do wrong? That's right, you did nothing wrong. But great heaven and earth is not what you think it is. It's actually a person, or rather a cultivator whose emotions cannot be swayed by those he created, like you. Guan's answer shocked Jiang Qiong. Her beautiful eyes widened, speechless. Because the words came from Guan, she believed them. And because she believed, her perception was overthrown. She felt the world was preposterous. While Guan was explaining the truth about great heaven and earth to Jiang Qiong, the Celestial Spirit God had already arrived before the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, no longer smaller in stature than the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Under the presence of the two mighty beings, the Celestial Spirit Great World seemed nothing more than a stepping stone, no longer holding the grandeur and magnificence of great heaven and earth. The Celestial Spirit God, still holding the Celestial Tao Divine Axe and emitting a strong heavenly light, dazzling to the extreme, looked at the great cauldron in the hands of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable and spoke. Purple Chi Creation Cauldron, being with you has done it a disservice. Today, I hope you will let it show its true strength. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable fixated on the Celestial Spirit God. You have grown stronger. The Celestial Spirit God lifted the Celestial Tao Divine Axe, pointing at him. After I execute you and destroy your great thousand world, I will shed the identity of the Celestial Spirit, and ascend to an even higher rank among the immortal gods. Had you not ambushed me back then, the outcome would still be in question. As the celestial spirit immortal venerable's voice fell, the purple chi creation cauldron burst forth with a vast chi sea. The silvery stellar sea suddenly expanded, enveloping the entire universe. The aura of the celestial spirit immortal venerable surged relentlessly. He was absorbing the power of all things in the universe, including the powers of those great worlds. The celestial spirit god still did not make a move. The soul of the immortal seeker floated in the distance, his gaze locked on the celestial spirit god. He could tell that the celestial spirit god had utter contempt for the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Has he reached a higher realm? The immortal seeker frowned, feeling uneasy. It was not just him. Even the celestial spirit immortal venerable could feel the disdain from the celestial spirit god. At that moment, within the celestial spirit immortal venerable, inside a dark space, and Hao stood beside the celestial spirit immortal venerable, both gazing ahead. 100 yards away, a screen of light suspended, showing the figure of the celestial spirit god. Looking at the immovable celestial spirit god, the disheveled and Hao felt uneasy. He turned to the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "Are you confident?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable, dressed in a white robe, looked very similar to An Hao, though with a more weathered face. "I can only do my best, and besides I have no other choice, do I?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable replied, his answer darkening An Hao's expression. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned to An Hao with a smile. "Don't worry too much. With my abilities, even if I cannot defeat him, helping you to escape to safety is hardly a difficult task." An Hao was not pleased. He asked, "Why do you treat me this way?" He had a suspicion in his heart but dared not voice it. "You guessed right, but also not quite. You can indeed be considered my child, but not in the way you understand birth. You were conceived from my own Tao, and it was my choice to let you be born where you were. As long as you are within my great thousand world, I could even keep you immortal. I have always been watching over you." The celestial spirit immortal venerable continued. Chapter 551. Guan versus the celestial spirit god. _2 And Hao didn't feel shocked. In the thousands of years he had spent comprehending the celestial Tao golden core, he had long sensed that his destiny pattern was extraordinary, which is why he could feel his own mission. He stared at the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "The change of era, was it your active choice, or was it the choice of the heavenly Tao?" If there were no change of era, the celestial Tao light layer weakening, how would the celestial spirit god dare to make a move? In the process of his comprehension of the heavenly Tao, he could feel the suppression of the so-called immortal gods by the heavenly Tao. "That's right, it was my active choice," replied the celestial spirit immortal venerable, his gaze fixed on the celestial spirit god in the light screen. And Hao immediately became anxious and asked, "Why?" "You know I need time to grow. Given time, I would surely be able to help you eradicate the celestial spirit god and aid in your resurrection." He had absolute confidence in his talent. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned to look at him, his eyes complex, and said, "Child, you truly are my most perfect creation. You make me prouder than the entire great thousand world. But it's not that I don't give you time, it's because there are existences in the world that are even more terrifying than the celestial spirit god." "What existences?" And Hao frowned and asked. Today, the number of powerful beings ravaging the celestial spirit great world were countless, and many names flashed through his mind. At that moment, in reality, the celestial spirit immortal venerable's right hand raised, and the purple chi creation cauldron took flight, spinning, the mouth of the cauldron facing the celestial spirit god. Boom! A majestic force that made the entire universe tremble erupted from the cauldron mouth, and a vast silver blue chi sea burst forth, grand and unstoppable, illuminating the celestial vault of the celestial spirit great world. Wuxia world. Sight countless creatures lying on the ground looked up to see the celestial vault disappear. They saw a silver blue giant river, within which countless stars twinkled. The eyes of all beings were filled with dots of silver blue light. They saw the figures of the celestial spirit god, and the celestial spirit immortal venerable, resembling two founding gods, making all creatures feel their own insignificance. Even those in the immortal Tao realm felt nothing but infinite reverence in their hearts at this moment. The divine power of the purple chi creation cauldron fell onto the body of the celestial spirit god, blocked by a layer of white light. How domineering was this silver river, capable of destroying everything. The space it passed through was ripped apart into dark regions, yet even such a powerful force could not shake the figure of the celestial spirit god. Is this all you can do? The voice of the celestial spirit god sounded, with a hint of disappointment. Inside the dark space, and how witnessed this scene, his brows deeply furrowed. As for what existence, I cannot tell you. Now our opponent is him, the celestial spirit god, the real immortal god. The celestial spirit immortal venerable looked ahead as he spoke, his expression returning to indifference. As his voice fell, the purple chi creation cauldron trembled, and from within that silver river emerged numerous silver figures. They swiftly attacked the celestial spirit god, and in the blink of an eye, the number of silver figures reached an exaggerated amount. They quickly surrounded the celestial spirit god, the disparity in their figures immense, like dust surrounding Mount Tai, yet somehow the dust was plentiful enough to completely surround it. Boom! A terrifying axe chi erupted, dispersing millions of silver figures, chopping through the silver river, striking the purple chi creation cauldron, and the mightily purple chi creation cauldron was directly sent flying. The purple chi creation cauldron disappeared into the depths of the universe, and all was once again silent. With just one move, the celestial spirit god had defeated the divine skills of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, even sending his treasure flying. The celestial spirit god maintained the posture of swinging his axe, his right arm turning slightly, swinging his axe again. The celestial spirit immortal venerable immediately raised his palm to defend, a powerful mana bursting forth containing the strength of thousands of great power of heaven and earth, wishing to contend against the celestial spirit god. Boom! A deafening roar resounded in the ears of all beings, and they faintly heard something like the sound of shattering crystal. Facing the attack of the celestial spirit god, the great magical power of the celestial spirit immortal venerable could not hold on, and was directly dispersed. His flesh bore densely packed wounds, gruesomely ghastly. Heaven balancing golden immortal. The immortal seeker floating in the void looked extremely ugly as he struggled to utter these 4 words. The heavily injured celestial spirit immortal venerable furrowed his brows, his gaze towards the celestial spirit god complex. Inside the dark space, the celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath. And how spirit was taught. He hadn't anticipated the disparity between the celestial spirit immortal venerable and the celestial spirit god to be so great. Yuan Hao asked cautiously. He didn't know how to show his concern, because right then, there was nothing he could do. It seems I cannot stop him. I will send you away. Once the celestial spirit great world is extinguished, you and I will have no more karma. Live well for me and witness an even vaster heaven and earth. The celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath and spoke somberly. Upon hearing this, and how immediately became anxious. He was about to speak when the voice of the celestial spirit god resonated through the dark space. Humph. Trying to escape? Do you really think it's like the old days? Before the words even fell, the celestial spirit god in the light screen swung his axe again. This axe struck not only the immense body of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, but also shattered the light screen and the dark space. Intense light poured in, enveloping and Hao and the celestial spirit immortal venerable. And Hao was horrified to find himself suppressed by an incredibly strong force, completely unable to move. He could only glance towards the celestial spirit immortal venerable. However, what made him even more desperate was the look of panic that appeared on the face of the celestial spirit immortal venerable. What realm are you exactly? The celestial spirit immortal venerable bit out, equally unable to move. He knew that the celestial spirit god was strong, but he hadn't expected the gap to be so huge. Faced with the celestial spirit god, he had no power to resist. In the midst of the blinding light, the celestial spirit god, just like before, stepped forward, seemingly symbolizing a divine power of destruction, unstoppable. Heaven balancing golden immortal mid-stage. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed through the space that was breaking apart, causing the celestial spirit immortal venerable to lose his composure. Chapter 551. Guan versus the celestial spirit god. _3 Even after creating the celestial spirit great world, the celestial spirit immortal venerable had barely reached the innate golden immortal realm, and the heaven-balancing golden immortal seemed infinitely distant to him, almost an extravagant wish. However, the celestial spirit god had attained it, even surpassing the early stage. In a daze, the celestial spirit immortal venerable thought back to when his master had taken him to the immortal palace, and he saw the celestial spirit god. At that time, the celestial spirit god was merely his junior, who had appeared in the immortal palace because the master of the immortal palace had taken notice of his talent. Rising from the mortal world, to become the heaven-encompassing free immortal, the celestial spirit immortal venerable didn't care about this. In his eyes, even if the talent of the celestial spirit god was extraordinary, it would never surpass his own. In the end, he died at the hands of the celestial spirit god. And now, the celestial spirit god had far surpassed him. Throughout the long years of death, the celestial spirit immortal venerable could sense the presence of the celestial spirit god. The celestial spirit god had never left, which means the celestial spirit god had achieved the heaven-balancing golden immortal by meditating and attaining enlightenment on his own. Thinking of this, the celestial spirit immortal venerable's pride was completely shattered. He totally lost his spirit. Senior! Senior! Faint voices reached the celestial spirit immortal venerable's ears, but they could not awaken his fighting spirit. Father! Suddenly, the celestial spirit immortal venerable felt a jolt like thunder awakening him. He instinctively turned his head and saw An Hao looking at him, his face fierce. Father! Since you are my father, you cannot just surrender. Even if you die, you must die fighting. An Hao gritted his teeth and roared, struggling to speak as he was unable to move. Sir, the novel Fire. Net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He could accept defeat, he could accept death, but he could not accept the celestial spirit immortal venerable losing confidence. Ever since his parents died in his childhood, he too had fantasized about them still being alive. Facing a demon beast back then, his father was just a mortal who, in order to protect him, fearlessly drew the beast away. It was his father's example that gave him the courage to fight to the death to protect an Xian from the same village. Later he met Guan, the most important mentor of his life, whose strength and fearlessness guided him. The fear of the celestial spirit immortal venerable made An Hao angry. He would not allow the celestial spirit immortal venerable to display such loss of composure. What fear is there in death? Touched by An Hao's gaze, the celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath and looked back at the celestial spirit god with a determined expression. He struggled to raise his right hand, facing the aura of the heaven-balancing golden immortal, his hand shaking uncontrollably, not from fear, but from being unable to bear the pressure. Even in death, I must protect him. The celestial spirit immortal venerable bit his teeth, thinking thus in his heart. Suddenly, the celestial spirit god appeared abruptly in front of the two, raising the celestial Dao divine axe high, ready to strike at An Hao. He intended to execute An Hao right in front of the celestial spirit immortal venerable. The pupils of the celestial spirit immortal venerable shrank, time seemed to freeze, and he felt so slow. Although An Hao was right beside him, his hand just couldn't reach him. An Hao's face was illuminated by a bright light. He remained fierce, his eyes filled with towering rage, staring fixedly at the celestial spirit god. He was ready to face death, but he did not wish to die without dignity. Boom! Darkness fell before An Hao's eyes, and then a wild wind arose. The pressure that bound him suddenly vanished, but another indescribable force enveloped him, forcing him to close his eyes. Ha! The surprised voice of the celestial spirit god rang out, startling An Hao into hurriedly opening his eyes. When he saw the figure before him, his eyes widened and his body trembled. Between the celestial spirit god and An Hao, a figure appeared, blocking the celestial Dao divine axe in the hands of the celestial spirit god. The divine axe was suspended above the head of this person, unable to fall, the blade about 10 centimeters from their forehead. But it was these 10 centimeters that saved Enhao's life. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable also felt the binds on himself disappear, and turned to look at the figure that had appeared. His brows furrowed tightly, his eyes filled with fear. "Master!" Enhao exclaimed excitedly. That person was none other than Guan. Guan, dressed in black, stood in front of Enhao, his robe fluttering, the Cyan Hong sword hung at his waist, his right hand still resting on the hilt, as he calmly stared down the celestial spirit god. As their four eyes met, the celestial spirit god's gaze held a scrutinizing hint, while Guan was as peaceful as still water. Guan had imagined countless times standing in confrontation with the celestial spirit god. Now that the moment had truly arrived, his heart settled into an unprecedented calm. At that moment, facing the celestial spirit god was not just Guan. There was also the extremity, Yangxian, and the Black Profound Emperor. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 552. Celestial Idao Skill. One sword slays God. Celestial Spirit God. Middle stage of Hengtian Golden Immortal Realm 0/0/0. Guan looked at the lifespan detection prompt before him, feeling puzzled. The fact that information could be detected indicated that this celestial spirit god was indeed in real flesh. A situation where all values were zero made him think of the divine exotic ghost king. Was this so-called immortality dependent on sacrificing one's own lifespan to some power? Who are you? The celestial spirit god's voice echoed in the fragmented dark space, his posture poised with the axe raised. Guan stood before him, gazing calmly and said, "As an immortal god, yet you seek to annihilate all beings in the great world. I really want to know, is this your own principle of action, or the will of the celestial court?" In his past life, while he was still on Earth City, he had heard of the myths of the celestial court, with both positive and negative aspects. The status of the celestial court in mythology was undeniably recognized by the Wuxia people. This life, whenever he heard of the celestial court, his feelings were complex, joyful yet anxious. He was joyful that the name of the celestial court could reach the earth where he came from. Was there hope for him to return? Anxious because if the celestial court truly existed, would his writings of Journey to the West, and the investiture of the gods, alarm the celestial court? These emotions had been smoothed out as time passed. The celestial spirit god looked at Guan and asked, "Is it important?" "Very important." The answer made the celestial spirit god fall silent for a moment. The celestial spirit god solemnly said, "The heavenly Tao has its celestial rules, celestial gods have their own choices." This response slightly changed Guan's view of him. By this point, that the celestial spirit god could maintain the image of the celestial court was enough to prove his loyalty to it. And it also indicated that his attitude towards the celestial spirit great world stemmed from personal feelings. A force more powerful than the celestial spirit god erupted, repelling him, and the collapsing dark space shattered as well, transporting them back into the cosmos. Tao protecting divine essence. The powerful divine power dispersed the celestial Tao divine light, surrounding the celestial spirit god, revealing his true form. He was dressed in heavy silver armor, his helmet adorned with a silver dragon. His breastplate resembled a qilin, shoulder pads with phoenixes spreading their wings, and a red belt emanating pieces of world power. In his hand, the celestial Tao divine axe contained vast heavenly power, blazing and imposing. An astonished expression appeared on the stern face of the celestial spirit god. Just one move, and he felt that the other's cultivation level was not weaker than his own. With such Tao practice, why intervene in the calamity of the great world? The celestial spirit god stared intently at Guan, and asked in a deep voice. He could feel boundless way of cause and effect enveloping the cosmos, and there was no escape for him. Even the connection to the heavenly Tao was severed. The opponent was exceedingly adept in the way of cause and effect. Guan raised his right hand, the celestial star sword appeared in his grasp, and the blade wrapped itself in dazzling sword light, intensely bright. And Hao looked at Guan holding the sword, his emotions surging, feeling as if his blood was boiling, his face turning bright red. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable looked at Guan with a complex look, especially noticing in Hao's expression, and felt even more mixed emotions. At this moment, the beings within the celestial spirit great world could not see the confrontation outside. They could only see the cosmic starry sky, and the whole world silence because of it. The beings were very nervous, unclear about what was to come. On a dilapidated island, Leah lay on the cliff, struggling to look up. The divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on his shoulder, excitedly looking towards the universe. Leah could feel its excitement and immediately guessed the reason. His expression turned complex, but it was as though a burden had been lifted from his heart. Indeed, it still depends on you. You are the true protector of this world, unparalleled. Leah gazed at the cosmic starry sky. Thinking thus, his eyes gradually filled with admiration. Just as this thought occurred, a sword light burst through the cosmic starry sky, illuminating the heavens and earth, making Leah instinctively close his eyes. In the cosmic void, the celestial spirit god froze in place, the darkness behind him cleaved in two by a streak of sword light, still gripping the celestial Tao divine axe, trembling all over. He fixated on Guan ahead, while Guan maintained the sword-swinging posture. The body of the celestial spirit god developed cracks, divine blood seeping out, his condition greatly resembling in Hao's. So fast, the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable stared at Guan, his expression grave. He hadn't seen clearly how Guan had swung his sword, and Hao's sense of it wasn't as profound, but he could tell that his master had suppressed the celestial spirit god's momentum, which excited him. The celestial spirit god's gaze sharpened, suddenly leaping up. Nearly instantly he burst forth with an even stronger aura, a vast sea of light appearing above him in the universe, and the celestial spirit god plunged into it, vanishing from sight. Soon after, within the light sea, a massive eye appeared. As this colossal eye opened, eyes of all sizes appeared from every direction in the universe, densely surrounding Guan and the two others, all these eyes fixated on them. Far away, the immortal seeker witnessed this scene, his expression changing once again. Celestial I Dao skill, he actually mastered such a great divine power. The immortal seeker was no longer startled for the first time by the celestial spirit god. He hadn't expected that he was still underestimating the celestial spirit god. His gaze unintentionally switched to Guan. For some reason he could not see Guan's true face, indicating that the other party was using some powerful method to isolate his senses. However, looking at Guan's figure, it felt familiar, as if he had met him before. But no matter how much he thought, he just couldn't remember. He didn't think he had a poor memory. Rather, the other had employed the power of cause and effect. The celestial spirit god had astonished him, and this suddenly appearing mysterious existence also filled him with curiosity and awe. All these years in the great thousand world, you are the first one to force me to exert my full strength. Those who defy the heavenly Tao should be reduced to ashes and smoke. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed, authoritative and domineering. In an instant, countless celestial eyes burst open in the starry sky, their pupils emanating multicolored lights. Almost instantly, Guan's mana enveloped celestial spirit Immortal Venerable, and Hao, and the celestial spirit great world below. The universe began to twist violently, distant meteors ignited into towering flames, while others were frozen solid. The celestial I Dao skill can invoke the power of the heavenly Tao, allowing the 3,000 great Tao to aid him. This skill could destroy the great thousand world. The face of the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable was solemn as he spoke, and Hao saw streams of nebulous starry seas appear in the distance, ravaging the cosmic void. Everything before him seemed chaotic, and even made him feel dizzy. An invisible force was invading him, an eerie sensation he had never experienced before. The celestial spirit Immortal Venerable looked at Guan and said, "Once the celestial I Dao skill is employed, you are essentially making enemies with the 3,000 great Tao. You cannot." He hadn't finished speaking when Guan suddenly swung his sword, and a silver-blue sword shadow appeared out of nowhere, sweeping across the dazzling, illusionary universe. In front of this sword shadow, meteors, heaven and earth, star clouds, and sun and moon all seemed insignificant. With one slash, thousands of celestial eyes were completely extinguished. Above, the sea of celestial light was also slashed away, revealing the figure of the celestial spirit god, his silver armor shattered, exposing his bloody and mangled body, his helmet thrown aside, his black hair splayed out. The celestial spirit god's eyes widened, incredulously looking at Guan. Guan suddenly appeared before him, his left hand quickly grasping the celestial spirit god's long hair, then raising his sword to slash. The sword light shone across the universe, illuminating thousands of great worlds and countless little worlds. Celestial spirit immortal venerable, and how immortal seeker, and the observing great power cultivators from afar all blinked their eyes. And when they opened them again, the omnipresent celestial Tao pressure enveloping the universe began to dissipate. They all looked in the same direction and saw a blurred figure floating in the void, one hand wielding a sword, the other holding the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god. Behind that figure still lingered the magnificent blue sword shadow, scattered deep into the universe. The divine blood of the celestial spirit god spilled down, scorching the space, causing meteors to be penetrated by the droplets, much of the divine blood falling into the celestial spirit great world, vanishing from the mortal world. The celestial spirit immortal venerable watched, dumbfounded. And Hao too was shocked. He knew his master was strong, but the celestial spirit god had already demonstrated an invincible demeanor, and such a powerful being had no chance against his master. Even more hopeless than the celestial spirit immortal venerable facing the celestial spirit god. At that moment, the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god that Guan held in his hand still had its eyes open, gazing up at Guan, filled with fear. It's impossible. Who are you really? The celestial spirit god asked in a trembling voice, unable to accept that his celestial Idao skill had been annihilated by a single sword strike. Even an image came to his mind. Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. That person, whose sword Dao talent had left a deep impression. If allowed to grow, could he reach the level of the man before him? Guan looked down at him expressionlessly, his right hand performing the universe in hand divine power, drawing the head into his palm, disappearing from sight. After doing all this, Guan turned around, looking at the universe. His eternal infinite divine sword had broken the celestial Idao skill. Yet the universe was still collapsing. This scene seemed to be moving towards the future he had predicted before. Although he was powerful, he could not manipulate the Tao rules of the Great Thousand World. Because this Great Thousand World did not belong to him. Guan could feel that the reason for the universe's collapse was not just the celestial Idao skill, but other factors as well. His gaze looked far towards the celestial spirit immortal venerable. The celestial spirit immortal venerable was also looking back at him, his face calm like a deep lake. And Hao also snapped out of his excitement, realizing the universe was collapsing, the atmosphere everywhere dense with danger and tension. Could it be? And Hao seemed to think of something, his expression turning unsightly. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned his head towards him and calmly said, "Previously, I extracted all the heaven and earth's power, already causing this great thousand world to lose its stable Tao order, coupled with the disruption of the celestial Idao skill. This great thousand world is on the verge of annihilation, ceasing to exist." Upon hearing this, and Hao, surprisingly unalarmed, looked at the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "What should we do then? Don't you have the slightest pity for all living beings?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned his head, looking far off at the figure of Guan, and said, "Previously, indeed I had none. However, when I saw him just now protecting the creatures of various heavens and earths from the oppression of the celestial Idao skill, I suddenly felt that I really should do something. It's also a good opportunity for me to repay him for his care and instruction towards you." As his words fell, the celestial spirit immortal venerable burst into a bright light. His celestial Tao golden core and heaven and earth Tao fruit flew out from his chest, hovering over his shoulders. "I will let this great thousand world be reborn in a new way, wash away the past cause and effect, allowing Celestial Court to not pursue the death of the celestial spirit god, so he can stay here at ease. Search the novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 553. Reshaping the Great Thousand World. Hearing the words of Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, and Hao's expression darkened. He realized what the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable intended to do, and he could neither agree with it nor stop it. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable wanted to sacrifice himself to save all living beings. As a son, and Hao could not agree, yet he could not disregard the life and death of all beings to stop him either. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable took a deep look at Guan. The Celestial Tao golden core on his shoulder burst forth with golden light, and the heaven and earth Tao fruit rose up, quickly blossoming into expanding spiritual energy that symbolized vigorous life force. And Hao was baptized by the Celestial Tao spiritual qi, and his wounds recovered rapidly. He clenched his fists tightly, gritting his teeth as he watched the gradually dissipating figure of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Guan watched this scene from afar, feeling somewhat conflicted. He guessed that the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable had noticed him, which made him uneasy. However, due to the relationship between the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable and Hao, he could not make a move against the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Now that the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to protect the beings of great heaven and earth, it was also a good thing for Guan. I was born in the Celestial Spirit Great World, and owe you a debt of gratitude. If there is a chance in the future, I will assist you in being reborn. That's what Guan thought to himself. He didn't dwell on it any longer, but chose to carefully sense the creation of heaven and earth. He too could create a great thousand world, but even if he did, he could not take a lifespan from his own great thousand world, so he did not do so. Taking a lifespan from within his own great thousand world would be like devouring his own mana, which would not increase his mana. However, even without doing so, he could comprehend the creation of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, thereby enhancing his understanding of the Tao. This was a rare opportunity, an opportunity brought by the self-sacrifice of an innate golden immortal. As the spiritual energy of nature spread, the twisted space of the universe gradually calmed down. The beings of the Celestial Spirit Great World, being the first to be swept by the nature's spiritual energy, recovered their chi power. The celestial vault also quickly took shape, replacing the view of the cosmic starry sky. Everything was returning to normal. At that moment, the Immortal Seeker unexpectedly flew towards Guan. If it weren't for their past acquaintance, Guan wouldn't have let him approach. With the mystery of the celestial dark purple micro Saint Tao body, even when the Immortal Seeker arrived in front of Guan, he still couldn't see his true form. Looking at the blurred image of Guan, the Immortal Seeker took a deep breath and said, "Fellow Taoist, by slaying the Celestial Spirit God, you will bring immense troubles upon yourself. Each immortal god holds a position in the Celestial Tao. Once they fall, the Celestial Court must be aware. Even if you use cause and effect to isolate this great thousand world, as long as the Celestial Court wants to investigate, finding you is only a matter of time. Among the Celestial Court, there are countless beings more powerful than the Celestial Spirit God. To the immortal gods of the Celestial Court, nothing is more important than its majesty." Guan looked down at the Immortal Seeker and asked, "So, what are you trying to say?" The Immortal Seeker replied, "If fellow Taoists can secure a Celestial Tao immortal position before the Celestial Court becomes aware, with your Tao practice, even if you're punished, the loss won't be significant. Celestial Tao immortal positions are easy to come by? I must be honest, I have an opportunity for a Celestial Tao immortal position in my possession." "That's not necessary. You may leave now. Your presence is a threat to me and to this great thousand world." Guan's response elicited a wry smile from the Immortal Seeker, who immediately bowed and took his leave. Before going far, his soul dispersed. The Immortal Seeker's method of fleeing this realm was self-demise. Guan wasn't much affected. He turned his gaze toward An Hao. Celestial spirit immortal venerable, was remaking the Tao rules of the great world, harboring a personal interest in bestowing his Tao inheritance upon An Hao. Even though it couldn't make An Hao's cultivation level soar directly, it could help An Hao cultivate better. Guan didn't interfere, nor did he fear any tricks from the celestial spirit immortal venerable, because he could sense that the causality of the celestial spirit immortal venerable was dissipating, not an act. However, Guan frowned lightly, his gaze shifting to the depths of the universe. As the celestial spirit immortal venerable was reconstructing the rules of the great thousand world, celestial Tao destiny appeared out of thin air along with the Tao. This made Guan very curious about the connection between the heavenly Tao and the great Tao. He had always thought that the heavenly Tao was weaker than the great Tao, or that the heavenly Tao was born based on the great Tao. Now it seemed that this heavenly Tao was as dominant as the great Tao. The figure of the celestial spirit immortal venerable completely faded away, and An Hao had fully recovered from his injuries. An Hao looked around, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. He too felt the destiny of the heavenly Tao. Could it be that all of this was not the doing of the celestial spirit God, and he only chose to act at this juncture? An Hao muttered to himself. His gaze then fell upon Guan. Guan felt his gaze and turned to look. Their eyes met, and Guan understood what was in An Hao's eyes. An Hao couldn't make out Guan's expression, but being watched by Guan made him feel at peace, and a smile appeared on his face. Wasn't this the moment he had been looking forward to? You'd better think it through. The beings you save will eventually die, and the great thousand world will return to normal in time. Guan's voice reached An Hao's ears. An Hao smiled and retorted, Master, how many of the beings you saved are still alive? They will eventually die, and you still took action, didn't you? Guan asked, Are you willing to let go of an Xian? And your wife, your children, can you truly cut all ties? Didn't you make arrangements for them? The only person I'm sorry to is you. I've lived for nearly 10,000 years and never repaid you, only caused you worries. An Hao spoke to Guan with a look of guilt. Guan really wanted to say that it was actually quite a simple task and no trouble at all, but looking at An Hao's expression, he knew that nothing he said would change An Hao's choice. Now Guan was strong, but not strong enough, at least not enough to free the great thousand world from the heavenly Tao, at least not enough to develop the world he lived in according to his wishes. However, Guan was quite relieved to see An Hao take on such responsibility. He couldn't change such an outcome, but he could leave An Hao a way out. Guan turned and disappeared into the void. More and more divine senses swept across, able to lock onto An Hao, yet not daring to come close. The previous battle made them shudder. Even though they hadn't seen clearly what had happened, the shadow of the eternal infinite divine sword and the grand and spectacular celestial Dao skill still gave them chills. Even Taoist Zhangzai immortal and profound Yuan free immortal would feel like they could be annihilated at any moment when facing the recent battle. An Hao looked toward the celestial spirit great world, his gaze filled with affection, and slowly raised his arms murmuring, Young immortal emperor, I will carry out the task you left unfinished. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, an Xian celestial demon child, Chun Chuan, and others had not been stripped of their mana and chi power by the celestial spirit immortal venerable. They were always discussing the battle situation. Guan appeared out of nowhere beside an Xian. As he appeared, the crowd immediately gathered around. Master, did you make a move? Was that sword intent just now the eternal infinite divine sword? Master, what's the situation in outer heaven now? And how in Jushi, who won and who lost? Who was the person who spoke earlier? They sounded so arrogant. I wonder how high their cultivation level is. Everyone kept asking, curious and excited. With the protection of the Taoist field of the beginningless, they hadn't truly felt the oppression from the outside world. Guan looked toward the celestial vault. From now on, you will never see those two again. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Their excitement immediately extinguished, and they subconsciously looked at an Xian. They weren't familiar with Jushi, they only knew that an Xian and An Hao were as close as siblings. An Xian too was stunned. She didn't have a breakdown of emotions but looked at Guan and asked, Master, have you seen him already? Yes. Then let it be. An Exian was very calm, and Guan did not say more. He turned to the others. A new era is coming, the universe will become infinitely vast. From now on, you will no longer live in the great heaven and earth, but in the great thousand world. The great thousand world. Everyone was astounded. They believed Gu An's words, and so they began to fantasize about the vastness of the great thousand world. And Shengtian was also somewhat dazed. Although he had cut off the cause and effect with Hao, he had always hoped to meet Hao. Would he really never be able to meet him from now on? SE of the Novel Fire. Any *T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Look! Celestial Cyan suddenly pointed at the sky, exclaiming loudly. Everyone turned their heads to look, and saw a sun appearing in the sky that was growing rapidly larger. Celestial Demon Child was about to ask Guan when suddenly, an unimaginable shockwave descended from the sky, leaving everyone in a bewildered state. The scene seemed to freeze. Everyone was fixed in place. Only Guan could still move. Guan looked up and could see Hao's figure, which was fading away. Hao had chosen the same path as his father, the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to reshape the Tao rules of the Great Thousand World, and Hao had chosen to sacrifice himself to reassemble the shattered Great Thousand World. And Hao was able to do this because he had received the Tao of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. He had become the controller of the Great Thousand World. In order for all living beings to quickly survive the calamities set by the heavenly Tao, he chose to sacrifice himself. In this catastrophe, Zhuxi was sent out of the universe by Immortal Seeker, the Celestial Spirit God was captured, and both the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable and Hao fell one after another. At first glance, it seemed there were no victors. Guan sighed at the capriciousness of fate, but he was also looking forward to the brand new Great Thousand World. Anyway, this calamity was just a note in his life. He needed to keep striving to become stronger. Intuition telling him that one day he would no longer be able to conceal himself, and he would need to directly face the might of the Celestial Court. When that day comes, whether he would compromise and ascend to immortality, or make other plans would depend on how high his cultivation level was. Guan retracted his gaze, and walked toward his own pavilion. As for the immobilized crowd, they wouldn't have any issues. Guan deliberately allowed Hao's power to enter the dojo, letting them rapidly get through the upcoming drastic changes of heaven and earth like all living beings. When they awoke, they would only think they had a dream. Guan suddenly looked in one direction, a trace of surprise in his voice. Everything in the universe was still under Hao's power. Yet Xinjun was unaffected, still fervently drawing in her house. Guan felt a special aura from Xinjun, one that he couldn't deduce. This made him even more curious. What kind of great Tao had Xinjun stepped into? As Guan was pondering, a powerful light that drained all colors from everything descended from the sky, enveloping his figure and all of existence. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 554 Nine Heavens Cyan Bird. Taiching golden immortal sunlight was brilliant, filtering through the gaps in the leaves and leaving patches of light across the grass in the forest. An Exian sat on a rock beside a stream, delivering a sermon to a group of boys and girls. Her voice was mesmerizing, so much so that even the birds perched on the trees cocked their heads to listen attentively. She had been speaking for half a day now, her patience greater than before, as a gentle smile constantly graced her face. Seeing the Qiankuan sect disciples enraptured by her Taoist teachings, an Exian turned her head to look around but couldn't find Guan. However, she believed her master was still there. Indeed he was. 10 yards away, on an old tree, Guan was lying on a branch, hesitating as he stared at his attribute list. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 9,555,89,904,572,611. Physique: primordial infinite body. Cultivation level: heaven balancing golden immortal realm perfection. 800 years had passed since the Great Thousand Worlds restructuring, a cataclysmic process, but under and how and the celestial spirit immortal venerable's protection. All beings were unaffected, feeling only as if they had sunk into a profound dream. Upon awakening from the dream, every major sect realized that the world had become boundlessly vast, so much so that even beings above the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, who flew towards outer heaven, were utterly astounded by the current world. The endless expanse of the world, a thicker celestial Tao light layer, and the universe had become even more dim. And how had gathered all the worlds within the cosmos to create the entirely new celestial spirit great world. The celestial spirit great world was more than 10,000 times larger than the celestial spirit great world. In the previous 10 millennia, not only the celestial spirit great world had faced calamities of the heavenly Tao, but other great worlds experienced the same. Without the protection of the supporting Tao sword venerable, many had long been eradicated of all life. Thus, after the restructuring of the celestial spirit great world, the heavens and the earth became vast yet desolate. With the world so infinitely vast and the number of living beings not even close to the new world's capacity, the calamities of the heavenly Tao receded. With no impetuousness left in nature's spiritual energy, young immortal emperor's proposal had been implemented by Anhao, and everything was evolving for the better. Worth mentioning is that after Anhao's sacrifice, his wife and children received considerable cosmic destiny, and within just 100 years, Guan witnessed the birth of a genius in the Yin family with a potential lifespan of 8,000 years. Guan wasn't sure if it was the world's favor or Anhao's will that looked after his descendants, but according to his calculations, the Yin family would rise in the next 10,000 years, eventually becoming one of the strong families in the world. Right now, Guan's hesitation was not about the affairs of others, but his own concerns. He planned to first comprehensively enhance his own Taoist techniques. Then, after accumulating another 200 billion years of lifespan, he could strike for an even higher realm. A lifespan nearing 900 billion years seemed massive, but in truth, if he intended to enhance every aspect, it would probably be spent soon. No matter, he must improve. Even though the celestial spirit immortal venerable had already reshaped the order of the great Tao in the great thousand world, and the celestial spirit god had not fallen, temporarily avoiding the celestial court's notice, he had to maintain the pace of getting stronger. After this increase in strength, he would start dealing with the celestial spirit god. Guan began to utilize his lifespan breakthrough. You have activated the lifespan breakthrough function. Based on your current realm, the following breakthrough locations have been selected for you. 1. Ascending to Yellow Heaven. 2. Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens. 3. Abyss Tao C4. Path of the Great Tao. 5. Eastern Sea Celestial Palace. 6. Primordial Emperor Domain. 7. Profound Abyss Divine Pool. 8. Golden Immortal Ancestor Tree. 9. Ling Mountain. Looking at the choices that had popped up before him, many of which he was seeing for the first time, Guan couldn't help but be moved by the infinite vastness of the Great Tao. The path of the Great Tao connected the 3,000 great worlds, and beyond the Great World were many more mysterious places. Guan's previous breakthrough had taken him to the celestial extreme 9 heavens, which left a deep impression on him. After some contemplation, he felt that returning to the celestial extreme 9 heavens was the best option. He was uncertain of the other locations, and although the celestial extreme 9 heavens had powerful beings, they were few in number. With his decision made, Guan chose the celestial extreme 9 heavens for teleportation. Teleporting to celestial extreme 9 heavens will require the consumption of 10 billion years of lifespan. Do you wish to proceed? Continue. Guan closed his eyes after making his choice, and that long-absent sensation of dizziness appeared. After a while, Guan opened his eyes, and what met his gaze was an endless sea of clouds, majestic and vast. The sky was still so high, with no land in sight, and no matter which direction he looked, he saw nothing but the sea of clouds and the sky. He immediately activated his lifespan barrier, and sat down to meditate on the spot. Without saying a word, he began to evolve and improve, starting with his physique. Each time, Guan invested 1 billion years of lifespan, operating slowly. It took nearly 4 billion years to advance from the primordial Tao golden body to the primordial infinite body. This time would surely take even more. Billion after billion years, Guan was collected and composed, not feeling the slightest bit of heartache. In the end, it took approximately 50 billion years for the primordial infinite body to advance to the primordial reincarnation undying body. As the final prompt fell, an enormous surge of Tao spiritual qi flooded towards Guan. The boundless sea of clouds began to churn in a very short time. Luckily, not as dramatically as the previous breakthrough. Guan closed his eyes and began to immerse himself. An hour later, his physique's transformation was successful. With the primordial reincarnation undying body, not only did his physique grow stronger, but the power of the great Tao could no longer control his flesh, and it was not worn down by reincarnation. Even if his lifespan reached its limit, his body could exist forever. Now he could enter reincarnation in his physical form as smoothly as a fish takes to water. Guan opened his eyes and his gaze fell on the cultivation technique column in his attribute list. Upgrade the main technique first. Great Tao Great Freedom as you wish Bible. He began to invest lifespan for evolution. Investing 36 billion years of lifespan at once. The Great Tao Great Freedom as you wish Bible was elevated to the Taoist Dominator skill, reaching an in-depth level of understanding. Tao spiritual qi surged toward him once again, and an endless stream of Taoist technique memories burst forth in his mind. Sar the Nelfer. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The Taoist Dominator skill, as the name implies, could dominate the Great Tao. Once mastered, Guan could comprehend any kind of Great Tao, and in facing any kind of Great Tao, he could discern its weaknesses in an extremely short time. Most importantly, this technique could merge the 3,000 Great Tao into one force, aptly named the Dominator's power. Another half an hour passed, and Guan successfully mastered the Taoist Dominator skill. He didn't have time to experience it in depth, and continued to enhance other Taoist techniques. Regardless of the tier the Taoist technique reached, lifespan evolution could always allow Guan to master it within half an hour, which was also a significant advantage. The Great Thousand Following Heart to Void skill was upgraded to the Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao, consuming nearly 50 billion years of lifespan. This technique helped Guan to conceal his cultivation level and aura. Even those with a realm higher than his could not see through it. Though of course, if the disparity in cultivation was too vast, it might not remain hidden, which was why he continued to elevate this technique. The Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao was even more domineering, allowing Guan to disappear into the order of the Great Tao. Even if he was still present, no one would detect him. He could even turn his aura into the sun, moon, and stars, perfectly concealing himself. Again, the inheritance took half an hour. After the inheritance ended, Guan's eyes turned to the secret skills, preparing to upgrade his combat methods. Just then, a vast aura descended, one that far surpassed that of the heaven-balancing golden immortal, causing a slight change in Guan's expression. He looked up. He saw a gigantic cyan bird appear in the sky, its wings spread wide, eclipsing the sun. Its feathers shimmered with the colors of the rainbow, like a godly bird from creation, radiating an endless ancient and holy aura. This cyan bird was by far the most colossal creature Guan had ever seen. Even set against the celestial extreme nine heavens, the celestial vault seemed almost incapable of containing it. Guan hurled a lifespan detection at the cyan bird. Nine heavens cyan bird. Early stage of Taiching Golden Immortal Realm 218,726,929, 702/50, 000, 000, 000, 000, 000//50, 000, 000, more than 200 billion years old. A lifespan of 50 trillion years. Truly terrifying. Killing it would direct unlock the ability for a trillion years of lifespan. But the words Taiching Golden Immortal only allowed Guan to contemplate the idea. Of course, even if Guan had the ability to slay it, he would not take action. That was not his style. Moreover, he suspected that behind the nine heavens cyan bird, there stood even more powerful immortals, like the nine heavens immortal emperor. As Guan marveled at the 9 heavens Siam bird's lifespan, the bird suddenly descended, landing 10,000 miles away. 10,000 miles is a long distance for mortals, but to the 9 heavens Siam bird, a single movement of its claws could reach Guan's dojo. This made Guan tense, ready to teleport away at any moment. The 9 heavens Siam bird folded its wings and perched on the sea of clouds, its head reaching unscalable heights. Guan then saw a figure emerge, the white-robed woman known as the 9 heavens immortal emperor, appearing atop the head of the 9 heavens Siam bird. As before, Guan was still unable to perform lifespan detection on the 9 heavens immortal emperor, indicating that her true body was not present. Two powerful entities appeared beside her, causing Guan to dare not continue his evolution. He decided to wait for the 9 heavens immortal emperor and the 9 heavens Siam bird to leave before resuming. If they refused to leave, he would have no choice but to teleport back to the celestial spirit great world. Search the Novel Fire Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 555. Entering Reincarnation. 9 heavens immortal emperor stood atop the head of the 9 heavens Siam bird, his gaze sweeping across the sea of clouds, which tightened Guan's heart and made him constantly ready to teleport back. Each teleportation needed 100 billion year lifespan, making it 200 billion year lifespan for a round trip. Naturally, Guan was reluctant to return lightly. The 9 heavens immortal emperor had not discovered the lifespan barrier. The 9 heavens Siam bird was also unaware. After a while, a slightly childish female voice rang out. "Your Majesty, are you truly not going to the Grand Assembly of 10,000 Immortals?" Guan could feel that this voice originated from the 9 heavens Siam bird, even though the Siam bird had not spoken. The 9 heavens immortal emperor, looking into the distance with a cold expression, replied, "Boring. I've attended several times. There's not much difference. All superficial interactions, and I don't need the opportunities from the Grand Assembly of 10,000 Immortals. Your Majesty, although the celestial extreme 9 heavens is uniquely endowed, discussing Tao with other immortal cultivation great powers could further aid your cultivation. If you wish to go, you can go on my behalf. If you don't go, there's no point in me going. Forget it, let's not go. By the way, Your Majesty, what do you think caused this anomaly?" The 9 heavens Siam bird changed the topic and looked around the boundless sea of clouds as it spoke. The 9 heavens immortal emperor, expressionless, said, "The celestial extreme 9 heavens, located above the great thousand world, is a juncture of the great Tao. The anomaly here might have originated from the lower realm. Even I cannot directly determine." Hearing this, the 9 heavens Siam bird fell into thought, its bird eyes flickering with strange light. Above the great thousand world? Guan captured this information, growing more curious about the celestial extreme 9 heavens. Could it be that the 9 heavens immortal emperor has no connection to the celestial court? Guan did not feel the celestial Tao destiny from the 9 heavens Siam bird. And as for the 9 heavens immortal emperor, since she was not the true body, he could not sense anything. If he closed his eyes, he wouldn't even be aware of her presence. After a while, the 9 heavens immortal emperor leaped into the air and flew towards the distance. The 9 heavens Siam bird followed closely behind, and they soon vanished at the end of the sea of clouds. Guan relaxed and waited patiently. 1 hour later, no longer sensing the aura of 9 heavens Siam bird, he reopened the attribute panel and continued to enhance. Next up was the eternal infinite divine sword. Although he had already mastered the sacred heart sword Tao, which merged with the river of sword Tao, deemed an independent existence, he felt he couldn't solely rely on the sacred heart sword Tao. He needed stronger sword techniques as his trump card. The eternal infinite divine sword evolved into the 3,000 slaying Tao swords, achieving the mastery realm, consuming 80 billion year lifespan. During the half-hour inheritance, neither the 9 heavens immortal emperor nor the 9 heavens Siam bird returned. Thus Guan continued to invest his lifespan in evolution. Profound yellow eternal Tao step advanced into Taoless celestial net step, consuming 42 billion year lifespan, and reaching the realm of integration. Celestial dark purple micro Saint Tao body evolved into Hongming void golden body, also at the realm of integration, consuming 76 billion year lifespan. After upgrading the most core Taoist techniques, Guan turned his attention to the great soul capturing immortal technique. This technique could perform soul search, but as the enemy's realm was higher, the difficulty of soul search increased. It needed enhancement. This was still the transformation of soul capturing technique that Jiang Qiong had taught him years ago. Guan spent 130 billion year lifespan in one breath, allowing the great soul capturing immortal technique to advance several levels, finally evolving into Calamity Absolute I. Calamity Absolute I could not only perform soul search, but also bring bad luck to the enemy, with the nature of the calamity shaped by the caster's imagination. A very domineering divine skill. That's it. Search * the novel. F. Iyer. NT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guan dared not continue evolving because accounting for the lifespan barrier's consumption, he only had 230 billion year lifespan left and still needed 100 billion year lifespan to teleport back. After a series of evolutions and enhancements, Guan felt a complete transformation even though his cultivation level had not increased. His strength had greatly changed. Now, handling celestial spirit god should be effortless. Thinking this, Guan stood up. He gazed at the constantly churning sea of clouds, as if for one last look, since he definitely needed to change locations upon the next breakthrough. The recent appearance of the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor and Nine Heavens Siam Bird was definitely not a coincidence. They must have intended to investigate his whereabouts. Even if their words didn't directly reflect it, he had to stay alert. Guan chose to teleport back, and as he thought, he vanished on the spot. Guan returned to the forest near the Qiankuan sect, and could no longer see an Xian and the others. Unable to find him, an Xian returned to the dojo to cultivate. Guan did not hurry back. He jumped down from a tree, crossed a creek, and sat down on a large stone by the creek. Lifting his right hand, palm facing upwards, a skull appeared in his palm, the size of a pebble, indeed that of the celestial spirit god. The disheveled celestial spirit god opened his eyes and looked up at Guan, his expression becoming calm. After a century of suppression, he had adjusted his mindset and was prepared to face any outcome. Guan's pupils suddenly turned deep red, and the pupils of the celestial spirit god facing him involuntarily widened. Then his expression turned dull. Calamity Absolute I. He began to scour the memories of the celestial spirit god. The morning sun shone down, casting a long shadow of Guan. After a long while, Guan's eyes returned to their normal color, and his brows furrowed. The memories of the celestial spirit god were too simple. Spending years meditating under the world gate, much of his memory was blank, presumably related to the celestial court. However, Guan still obtained some useful information, such as why the celestial spirit god plotted against the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Many years ago, the celestial spirit god could have obliterated the celestial spirit great world, but he wanted to obtain the world punishment Tao Pearl held by the celestial spirit immortal venerable. The world punishment Tao Pearl, born from the great Tao, was a supreme treasure that could be used in battle and for comprehending the Tao, with infinite marvelous uses. The celestial spirit immortal venerable dared not readily use the pearl, fearing its master would come searching. The owner of the world punishment Tao Pearl was the Emperor Ziwei. Through the memory of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, Guan saw the Emperor Ziwei. This Emperor Ziwei looked exactly like the unparalleled Emperor Ziwei that the Black Profound Emperor had encountered in his lifetime. Guan guessed that the Emperor Ziwei was the reincarnation body of the Emperor Ziwei. Great powers project across the heavens, manifesting reincarnation, which is common. How formidable was the Emperor Ziwei, able to fight against hundreds at the same realm, and even force enemies to retreat. No wonder, being the reincarnation of the Emperor Ziwei. As Guan reflected inwardly, the celestial spirit god regained his senses. Startled, he looked at Guan and asked, "What have you done to me?" Guan looked down at him and inquired, Do you want to die, or do you want to live? When Guan questioned whether the celestial spirit god's apocalyptic acts were related to the celestial court, and the celestial spirit god admitted it was his own selfishness, Guan actually felt a trace of respect for him. The celestial spirit god was bold and accountable. It seemed a pity to kill such a person directly. The destruction by the celestial spirit god was nefarious to living beings, but from a cosmic perspective, he protected the cosmic order. Of course, whether the celestial spirit god wanted to live depended on his attitude. Faced with Guan's question, the celestial spirit god furrowed his brows. After a moment of silence he said, "I cannot possibly serve you. My fate today is merely reaping what I sowed. Had I not coveted the treasure and followed the heavenly Tao earlier, it would not have come to this. Just kill me." Having said so, the celestial spirit god closed his eyes. Suddenly Guan asked, "Have you ever been immortal?" Hearing this, the celestial spirit god opened his eyes, looking at Guan in surprise. In the memory of the celestial spirit god, he was born a favored child of heaven, and was taken as a disciple by the Emperor Ziwei early on. He stood above the masses from birth. Guan looked down at him and said coldly, "To kill you now would be too easy for you. Go to the human world and experience the struggles of humanity. In the eyes of immortal gods, mortal spirits are no different from dust, but how would you know the effort mortal spirits make just to survive?" As his words fell, Guan flipped his hand and threw the celestial spirit god into the creek. As the celestial spirit god fell, he looked at Guan. In his view, Guan was so magnificent. Indeed, he did not understand human suffering, but at that moment, he understood how mortals looked up to immortal gods. His vision quickly plunged into darkness. After Guan flipped his hand to let him go, he used his own divine sense to cast him into the cycle of reincarnation. After contemplating the Taoist dominator skill and the sun and moon selfless divine Tao, Guan could simply manipulate the path of reincarnation and make the celestial spirit god reincarnate. It was not difficult for him. He made the celestial spirit god be born in the celestial spirit great world to prevent him from escaping. The celestial spirit god was already bound by the Guthuan divine Tao, and his divine soul sealed. Without Guan's action, he would remain forever in the cycle of reincarnation, unable to escape. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 556. Guan's story. Guan entered the Taoist field of the beginningless, and from a distance, he saw two people engaged in combat high up on the mountains. It was Lv Xian and Chen Chuan. These two were the most combative, even more so than the blood prison great saint, but they were merely sparring, not fighting out of anger, so Guan never stopped them. Watching Chen Chuan's elegance in the sky, Guan was very gratified. In his memories, he had never seen Xiao Chuan so spirited and confident. He also pondered when to let Chen Chuan recover his memories from his past life, but he felt that such matters shouldn't be rushed. Letting nature take its course was best. A figure suddenly appeared beside Guan. It was an Xian, who looked at Guan with a grievance and said, "Master, why didn't you say a word to me when you left yesterday?" You're the master, or am I the master?" "Ah, I just wanted to go out with you for a bit. If you're bored, you could go to the Qianquan sect. Many new things will happen there, and I will also go to see the excitement." Really? Really? Guan was not lying. With the reshaping of the celestial spirit great world, various great heaven and earth started to interconnect. Sects began to wander the world, and in the coming years, the entire celestial spirit great world would embrace a thriving vitality. A new era was beginning. Sects vied for supremacy. Different great heaven and earth harbored different immortal cultivation philosophies, and these philosophies would clash, creating more sparks. The next era would be unprecedented. Those great powers who survived from the old era would rise to the pinnacle of authority, and the new great world would be far stronger than before. The new rules of heaven and earth would conceive more geniuses, even elevating the potential of these talents. Guan felt the destiny of heaven and earth, already foreseeing the birth of many geniuses with the ultimate lifespan of 9,999 years. He was very much looking forward to it. As the master and disciple chatted, they walked along the mountain path. The gentle breeze made an Xian a bit distracted. Unconsciously, she was already 9,521 years old. She felt her life experiences weren't rich, but this also meant she had lived a peaceful and comfortable life. She turned her head to look at her master beside her. His profile sent her heart into a state of tranquility. SE of the Novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. She too began to feel anticipation. 10,000 years later, a million years later, or even 10 million years later, would she still be able to follow by her master's side? If she followed, what kinds of views would she see? The spring festival of the Qiankuan sect had just ended, and the shadows of cultivators could be seen everywhere between the mountains. Most of the cultivators were flying in the same direction, towards a giant city surrounded by mountains on all sides, bursting with rays of light like a mirage, brimming with the grandeur of an immortal city. This city was Qiankuan sect's main city. 1,000 years had passed since the great world was reshaped. The Qiankuan sect seized the opportunity to develop quickly, not only becoming the leader of the orthodox Taoist sect on the nine-spirit continent, but also establishing prestige in the surrounding seas. This year, Qiankuan sect planned to hold the 100 Teachings Conference, inviting hundreds of orthodox Taoist sects from inside and outside the seas to discuss and exchange Taoist techniques. This was the first time for Qiankuan sect to hold such an event, making Qiankuan sect's main city extraordinarily lively. Within the main city, the library pavilion was packed. Under Enzin's guidance, the structure of Qiankuan sect was almost identical to the Supreme sect's. However, Qiankuan sect was far away from the Supreme sect, so the two sects had not intersected for the time being. Why is Qiankuan Venerable sold out again? With the foundation of the Qiankuan sect, why can't you print a few more copies? A young male disciple stood in front of the counter, glaring at the library pavilion disciple and demanded. The library pavilion disciple spread his hands helplessly and said, "Brother, shouting at me is no use, I'm just in charge of selling." The young male disciple glared at him and left with a flick of his sleeve. Then another disciple approached the counter to inquire about the book Qiankuan Venerable. At this moment, on the second floor of the library pavilion, Guan, dressed in blue robes, stood in front of a row of bookshelves browsing books. Celestial Demon Child came over and saw the title of the book he was looking at, not helping but curl her lips in distaste. "Young master, even a book like this is worth your time?" Outside the dojo, Guan had instructed not to call him master, but young master instead. Although Celestial Demon Child didn't understand, she thought calling him young master was quite nice. At least it made their relationship seem more equal, which often led her to wild fantasies. Guan, holding Nine Spirits Hero Legend, smiled softly and said, "As long as it's a book, it's worth reading." Since he started writing within the Qiankuan sect, a trend of novels had been set off, and Nine Spirits Hero Legend was one such novel about the protagonist's adventures, clearly trying to imitate his style. Hearing Guan's words, Celestial Demon Child pursed her lips and then turned to leave. She planned to take a walk in the city. With her cultivation level of the loose immortal realm, she was considered a great cultivator within Qiankuan sect and wouldn't run into trouble, especially with Guan there. After Celestial Demon Child left, Guan continued reading. It wasn't long before two women ascended to the second floor, none other than Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai. Since being saved by an Xian, they had lived on the nine-spirit continent. Later, seeing the Qiankuan sects rise to power, they voluntarily joined, and now they were also disciples of the Qiankuan sect. In reality, given their status, they could become elders, but they didn't want to be too tied down to the Qiankuan sect, knowing that they would eventually leave. "Sis, why did we come here?" Tang Kai asked in confusion. The library pavilion was full of miscellaneous books. If one sought the pursuit of Taoist techniques, they would visit the scripture pavilion. Li Xuanyu answered, "Just to look around. Your heart is too impatient, it's good to temper it." Her gaze swept through the second floor, passing over each disciple as if seeking something. However, after looking around, she did not find the person she was looking for, and a look of disappointment flashed in her eyes. Tang Kai, upon hearing Li Zuanya's words, immediately felt dissatisfied. She had just completed a meditation retreat of 800 years, and still she was considered impatient? She was about to retort when she saw Li Xuanyu walk toward the stairs leading to the third floor. I definitely am not impatient. These years, Tang Kai caught up with Li Xuanyu and tried to defend herself. Senior Sister Li. A voice came through, bringing Li Zuanya's steps to a halt. She turned to look and saw Guan, holding a book and walking between two rows of bookshelves. Li Xuanyu felt a little dazed. Having not seen him for 10,000 years, Guan seemed totally different from the person in her memories. The Guan in her memory was cautious and reserved, but the Guan before her now was handsome and extraordinary, seemingly an immortal walking amongst mortals. Tang Kai glanced at Guan, her expression one of suspicion. She was astounded at her first sight of Guan. What a handsome man. This was only her personal judgment, and not a case of love at first sight. She had wandered the world and seen many people, but had never come across a cultivator with a presence like Guan's. Even her beloved Liya did not have an aura to match Guan's. What attracted her more to Liya was his heroism and loyalty. Guan walked over to Li Xuanyu and asked with a smile, Senior Sister Li, don't you recognize me? Li Xuanyu came back to her senses and said with emotion, Of course, I recognize you. To be honest, the reason I've come here is to look for you. After all, your disciple is also on this continent, and everything about the Qiankuan sect is a lot like the Supreme sect. I guessed it had something to do with you. She didn't know that Guan was the supporting Dao sword venerable, but the strength of an Xian proved Guan's Dao practice had already surpassed hers. The reason she wanted to find Guan was merely to express her gratitude in person. She was not foolish. Anzin's rescue surely must have been at Guan's behest. I don't have such great capabilities. How about we find an inn to catch up on old times? Guan asked with a smile, and naturally, Li Xuanyu had no objections. Guan did not neglect Tang Kai and introduced himself to her. After exchanging pleasantries, the three of them went downstairs. Noticing Guan spending money to buy the Nine Spirits hero legend, Tang Kai's expression became odd. Now aware that Guan was Anzin's master, she held him in high esteem. But she hadn't imagined that such a great cultivator would read such trivial texts. Shouldn't a great cultivator be delving into the great Tao? Li Xuanyu, however, didn't mind. She knew Guan liked reading books. Seeing that Guan still had the same hobby made her feel a sense of closeness, as though the distance between them had narrowed. Later on, the three of them sat down at the closest inn, and after inquiring about each other's experiences, Guan turned the conversation to Liya, as Liya was the hub of their shared connections. Mention of Liya immediately excited Tang Kai, as his fame had already spread to the Nine-Spirit continent. Liya, with the 9 extreme sacred heart sword in hand, might not yet be the world's preeminent sword cultivator, but his strength was already formidable. Coupled with his adventurous spirit, his fame was widespread. People say he's made enemies with the shaking light saint sex saint, and is being hunted by them. I want to help him, but our sister said I'd just be in the way. Guan, since you are Li Ya's junior brother, can you help him? Tang Kai looked at Guan with a tone full of supplication. She had been through a lot with Li Ya and knew the hardships that lay behind his fame. He must be seriously injured again. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come to this point of enmity. Before Guan could reply, Li Xuanyu spoke up coldly. Tang Kai, don't bother junior brother Gu with Li Ya's affairs. Those were his own choices. Junior brother Gu has already saved us. We owe him a great debt of gratitude. How could we trouble him further? But there are no buts, Li Xuanyu said decisively, leaving Tang Kai with no choice but to nod in resignation. Guan looked at Li Xuanyu, finding her solemnity a bit amusing, and replied, Shaking Light Saint sect is indeed formidable, and is said to have the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, who is of the 6th heaven of the immortal path. They're not easy to provoke. 6th heaven of the immortal path. Li Zuanya's complexion turned unnaturally pale, while Tang Kai grew tense. Guan comforted them. Don't worry. With the immortal path ultimate treasure, divine exotic city, and the 9 extremes sacred heart sword in his hands, Senior Brother Li is a man of great destiny. He will surmount the danger. That sword is the world's foremost divine sword. Hearing his words, Li Xuanyu could only nod, while Tang Kai sank into deep worry. Afterward, Guan brought up the 100 Teachings Conference of the Qiankuan sect. Although Li Xuanyu was still engaging in the conversation, the mood had clearly grown colder. Half an hour later, Guan said goodbye to the 2 women. Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai stood at the entrance of the inn, watching Guan walk away. Sister, he's Li Ya's junior brother, and thus from the Supreme Sect. Why has he come alone to this faraway place? Tang Kai asked curiously. Li Xuanyu, looking at Gu An's receding figure, said, perhaps he's burdened with something, forcing him to leave his homeland. In life, we're often compelled by circumstances beyond our control. Upon hearing this, Tang Kai felt there was a story behind Gu An's silhouette, much like Li Ya. Just then, they saw a stunningly beautiful woman swiftly emerge from the crowd, quickly wrap her arm around Gu An's, and move forward with laughter and conversation, their intimacy evident. They soon disappeared into the throng of people. Tang Kai opened her mouth as if to ask something, but didn't manage to articulate her question. Li Xuanyu, too, remained silent. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 557. Celestial Spirit Reincarnation. Borrowing life amid the scorching summer days. Within the Taoist field of the beginningless, beside a lake, Guan was preaching the great Tao to his disciples, who were listening as if intoxicated. Seeing that everyone had sunk into the enlightenment of the Tao, Guan took out a jade flute from his bosom, and admired it closely. Guan, the great Tao you speak of is truly profound and vast, conjuring in me numerous visions. However, I am very curious, have you actually seen those embodiments of the great Tao? Shenzhen opened her eyes, looked at Guan, and asked curiously. She was the closest to Guan, and her voice was so soft that it did not disturb the others. Guan glanced at Shenzhen and said, the great Tao is everywhere. What have you seen? Where do you wish to go? With a troubled look, Shenzhen said, I saw the universe and the stars, and a white staircase leading to a door. What kind of door? Indescribable, all I can remember now is vague, but am sure it was a door. Shenzhen recounted while speaking. After a pause, she continued to ask, Guan, do you think those visions I see could be some form of calculation? Guan smiled at her and said, that's something you'll have to feel and judge for yourself. It's good that you're thinking about this. Never lose your reverence for the unknown. Always be vigilant, for it is often more beneficial than not. Shenzhen nodded and said, oh, be careful. If the great Tao guides me somewhere, I'm certain I won't go. She had heard from Guan about the experiences of An Hao and Zhu Shi, which made her even more vigilant about inexplicable opportunities. The visions she saw while seeking the Tao seemed like a lure, and she didn't want to be deceived. If you encounter things that are hard to judge, you can also talk to me about them, Guan said, then stood and turned to walk toward the nearby woods. Shenzhen had no further questions to ask, and she didn't follow Gu An's steps. After so many years, she had grown less curious about where Guan went. Now, she just wanted to comprehend the great Tao. In its vastness, she could experience all the things she desired. She aspired to become a great cultivator like Guan elsewhere. Guan stepped into the woods, and in one step went to another place in the human world. This was a mortal city, bustling streets, with no cultivators seen among the throngs of people, just 2 or 3 transformed demons. However, they did not do any harm but instead were performing their talents in a pavilion known as the Apricot Flower Tower. Guan appeared on the street without drawing the attention of the passers-by, for no one could see him. Even a boy passed through his body, feeling no physical collision. Gu An's gaze fell on the side of the street, where a group of beggars squatted in front of a courtyard wall. Among them a 14 or 15-year-old boy sat with his head down. On closer examination, he had no legs, and only 2 fingers on his right hand, a sight that made it difficult to imagine what kind of torment he had endured. This boy was a reincarnation of the celestial spirit god. This was his 39th time being reincarnated. He was born in a village, and before he was 1 year old, his family was raided by bandits, who killed everyone and sold him off. After a life of constant upheaval and numerous struggles, he ended up in such a tragic state. Despite the suffering of the celestial spirit god, Guan had no intention of intervening. Nevertheless, in every life of the celestial spirit god, he would observe. It wasn't to ridicule the celestial spirit god, but rather to help him recall some of his previous lives' memories at the time of his death, to let him feel the disparity between immortal gods and mortals. Oddly enough, Guan had not deliberately made the celestial spirit god experience a life of suffering, but most of his lives in the cycle of reincarnation were miserable. And even if born in happiness, he tended to die young, living to a maximum of 70 years in the best-case scenario. On second thought, it was normal, as most mortals have difficulty living past 70. In the scorching summer, this life of the celestial spirit god would end on the flourishing streets, with no one caring about his death. Not until a house servant from a wealthy nearby household dragged his body away, ultimately dumped in the wilderness, and devoured by scavenging wolves. And so, Guan merely stood on the street watching the celestial spirit god, with people coming and going as if in a dream. Search * the novel, F.I.R. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This live's celestial spirit, named Little Five, had been adopted by an old beggar. He was the 5th child taken in by the old man, hence the name Little Five. At the beginning of the year, the old beggar passed away, and Little Five now followed the eldest child for survival, presently in the throes of illness. To seek medicinal herbs, the eldest was at that moment being beaten by the servants of a medicine shop on another street. This city bustled with such vibrancy. People were drinking and making merry, spilling wine and meat on their tables. Some were reciting poetry and discussing romance under the trees, while others were barely breathing, lying on their beds as their family fought over money for medicine. There were people who went about their routines like zombies, thinking not of the future, but of ending the day's task sooner. The countless conditions of sentient beings unfolded before Guan's eyes, his expression unchanging, just quietly watching Little Five. Little Five seemed to feel something and slowly lifted his head. The streets were noisy and busy before his eyes. The close proximity of prosperity felt unattainably distant. In a daze, he saw an additional figure on the street, with people passing right through it, which was very eerie. His hands trembling, he raised them and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Indeed, there was a figure that no one else but he could see. Could that be an immortal god? Xiao Wu spoke weakly, while the 2 beggars beside him were asleep and didn't hear his murmur, and the other beggars didn't pay attention to him either, because everyone knew he was dying. Guan was surprised that Xiao Wu could see him. He hadn't intended for Xiao Wu to be able to see him. With that thought, Guan willed his presence to deepen, and he disappeared from Xiao Wu's sight in an instant. Seeing that he had disappeared, Xiao Wu instinctively looked in other directions, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see Guan again. It was just an illusion after all. I knew someone like me couldn't possibly encounter an immortal god. Xiao Wu hung his head low again, continuing to endure the suffering from his illness. Until dusk, a beggar walked over, quivering. It was Xiao Wu's older brother, known as Lauda. He squatted in front of Xiao Wu, placed the medicinal herb bag stained with blood on the ground, shook Xiao Wu, but there was no response from him. Lauda's eyes widened with bloodshot eyes, and his right hand trembled as it moved toward Xiao Wu's nose. Soon he got a fright. He didn't push Xiao Wu away. Instead, he lifted Xiao Wu onto his back and, taking the medicinal herb bag, walked away. Following that, Lauda carried Xiao Wu on his back, and went to all the large and small pharmacies in the city, but no one was willing to treat Xiao Wu. Out of desperation, Lauda gritted his teeth and carried Xiao Wu out of the city. As night fell, Lauda didn't look back amidst the fading hustle and bustle behind him, and pressed forward with unwavering determination. Lauda carried Xiao Wu aimlessly forward, not knowing where he should go, but he was unwilling to give up. It was only when he heard a wolf's howl that he finally snapped out of it, by which time he had already lost his way. Don't be afraid, Xiao Wu, Big Brother will definitely save you, definitely. Lao Da murmured to himself softly. He was trying to bolster his own courage. There were always legends in the countryside of immortals living deep in the mountains. The physicians in the human world were not willing to save his brother, so he had to seek out an immortal. He's already dead. Where do you think you're going to take him? Such deep brotherly love. Well, we could save him, but you'll have to give something in return. 3 feminine voices rang out, coquettish and seductive, making one's imagination run wild. Except in the darkness of the night, they seemed sinister and frightening. Fear gripped Lao Da internally, his filthy face unable to hide the terror as he swallowed and asked, "What do I have to give to save my brother? Could it be a demon?" Their voices didn't sound like those of immortals. Lao Da thought so, and without any other options available, he braced himself and inquired further. Suddenly, a cold wind blew from the depths of the forest, forcing Lao Da to instinctively step back. On the trunk of the tree before him appeared 3 white foxes, smirking cunningly, their eyes glowing green in the dark night, which was quite terrifying. Lao Da's legs trembled with fear. The sight of a demon directly drowned his heart in terror. Yet he did not throw Xiao Wu down and flee. One of the white foxes chuckled. "Become our servant, and we will save him." Lao Da mustered his courage and asked, "Just as a servant?" "As a servant for life, until you die of old age. Oh, by the way, if your brother wants to live, he must borrow someone else's life. Before dawn, you must kill a person and bring them before us. Otherwise, once daylight comes, even if the celestial spirit God himself appeared, there would be no reversing fate." The white fox in the middle sneered coldly, her words sending a chill through Lao Da. Kill someone? Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 558. The Legend of Lu Qiuxian. The night was like water. 3 white foxes teasingly stared at the boss, as if looking at prey. Faced with their gaze, the boss was engulfed in an inner struggle, and little 5 on his back had no breath left, his body growing stiffer, which made his heart even more anxious. Although he was a beggar, living at the lowest strata of society, many people humiliated him, but he had never thought about killing anyone. At most he just wanted to beat up those who bullied him. In his view, killing was an unforgivable act, but his younger brother, little 5, was still waiting for him to rescue. The boss took a deep breath. He looked up at the 3 white foxes and gritted his teeth. "This is it. Take my life to save my brother, and let my brother serve you as a servant for a lifetime." Little 5 was disabled, and life was hard to manage by himself. If he could be tied to these 3 demons, perhaps he could find a better way out. Although demons were not as powerful as the immortal gods, they were still not comparable to ordinary people. What if the demons could make little 5 grow legs? Hearing what the boss said, the 3 white foxes were stunned for a moment, and then they started giggling. "Your brother is a cripple. Is he supposed to serve us, or should we serve him?" "Mortal, you think too much. Such a coward doesn't even deserve to serve us." Facing the demon's mockery, the boss was not angry, just more nervous and uneasy. He finally had a chance to save his brother. How could he give up? "As long as you are willing to go into the city and kill, we can make your brother normal, repairing the physical defects, and there are plenty of evil people in this city. It's not just your brother you'd be saving," one white fox said with a profound meaning, which made a new light shine in the boss' eyes. At the same time, Guan stood under a nearby tree watching this scene. These 3 white foxes were Tier 2 demons, comparable to the Foundation establishment realm, still unable to undergo transformation. What they said was true, hoping the boss would kill the evil people in the city. They dared not act personally, because there were immortal cultivation sects nearby that would capture and kill misbehaving demons, thinking that using the boss as a proxy would be enough to deceive everyone. Guan had no intention of interfering. Even if people died because of this, he wouldn't care. He had rescued too many beings before. Now he wouldn't hesitate over the life and death of one person. Of course, if someone truly moved his heart, he would act as he wished. Eventually, the boss agreed. He put down Little Five and then returned to the city alone. As soon as he left, the 3 white foxes surrounded Little Five and began casting spells to protect his soul. Little Five's lifespan and maximum lifespan were not merely 15 years old. Indeed, they had ways to save his life, but from now on, it would be hard for him to sever ties with demons. Guan watched for a while, and then disappeared from the spot. Even though there were 3 white foxes altering his fate, Little Five's life was destined not to ascend to immortality. This was the punishment Guan had in mind for the celestial spirit god. Guan wouldn't deliberately manipulate the celestial spirit god's birth and life experiences, but would set a limit on his life. The summer night wind still carried a bit of cold. One white fox suddenly shivered and said in a low voice, "Why am I a bit worried, feeling like this might cause trouble?" The fox next to her glared and scolded. "What's there to be afraid of? Are you going to be a concubine for that profligate young master from the city lord's mansion?" "I don't want to, he looks so disgusting. Mainly because he bullies too much, we must kill him, and once that guy comes back, we'll pass on his martial arts to him. It can only be so." The voices of the 3 white foxes gradually quieted down, and eventually, the woods fell into a silent, oppressive and terrifying stillness. Sand filled the sky, and on a cliff, Zhang Buku with all white hair stood at the edge, shirtless, looking down at the blood lake below. His upper body was muscular, full of power, with blood streaks twisting, making him look even more terrifying. A Buddha head flew out from the sand. It was the Buddha Immortal. Buddha Immortal looked at Zhang Buku, his stone face showing a complicated expression. He was forced to teach Zhang Buku to cultivate, but he hadn't expected Zhang Buku to be so suited to his Tao, far exceeding his expectations. If he could really possess Zhang Buku, maybe he could surpass this life in the next one. Just thinking about it made him regret. Of course, even with several more courage, he wouldn't dare act recklessly. Just the thought of how Guan felt pressing down on his head made him shiver in fear. Zhang Buku turned to look at the Buddha Immortal and asked, "Where is the realm master of the divine exotic realm now?" Buddha Immortal replied, "According to your wish, I have sent him to 1,000,000 world, and he is now very safe. If I find out you've deceived me, this favor will turn into hatred. Rest assured, since I've already done this much, why would I kill him? He's in the Tai's great world. Once your cultivation ends, I will send you to that great world. There, the opportunities are abundant, and the control of the immortal gods is weak. It's a perfect place for your growth." The Buddha Immortal didn't take offense to Zhang Buku's rudeness and replied calmly. Thousands of years had passed, and he had now shifted his mindset, beginning to look forward to Zhang Buku's future. Zhang Buku had such a powerful being behind him, yet they hoped he would mentor Zhang Buku, seeing it as an opportunity. No matter how high his realm might be, one always needed a backing. Should the celestial court discover him one day, perhaps he could rely on the existence behind Zhang Buku. Hearing the Buddha Immortal's answer, Zhang Buku asked no more. After cultivating in this realm for so many years, his heart had also calmed down. Rather than dwelling on calculations he couldn't resist, it was better to grasp the time and diligently cultivate. He raised his right hand, and a bloody wind emerged from his palm, forming a small vortex. In an instant, the yellow sand from the sky rushed over, and his right hand rose higher until a yellow sand tornado appeared on his palm, becoming increasingly spectacular. The Buddha Immortal asked in surprise, "You can already feel the force of heaven and earth in this realm?" "Indeed, it doesn't seem difficult. I'm curious, can I use the control over the force of heaven and earth in other great worlds?" Zhang Buku replied. The Buddha Immortal smiled and said, "Naturally, the great world I opened is not weak. Moreover, this realm has existed for an incredibly long time. If you can control this realm, you could use the force of heaven and earth in other great worlds." Upon hearing this, Zhang Buku's mouth curled into an almost arrogant smile. At that moment he thought of Master Gu and Liya. During the long years of cultivation, he often thought of these two people, relying on the remembrance of old friends to recall where he came from, and where he would go in the future. "Master Gu, Liya, you can't imagine how strong I've become now. I really hope to let you witness my growth. Zhang Buku was surging with emotions, growing stronger, gaining more and more confidence. If Master Gu and Liya were already dead, Zhang Buku would also go to seek them through reincarnation. Isn't immortal cultivation all about pursuing one's desires? What he desired was to enjoy drinks and travel the universe with Master Gu and Liya. The Buddha immortal looked at the tornado in Zhang Buku's hand and thought of another person, wondering if Zhang Buku would ever have the chance to compete with that individual. Buddha immortal, how much longer until I can leave? Don't rush. I have one more divine skill to teach you. Once you master it, you can leave. Oh, what is this divine skill? It will allow you to travel through the 3,000 great worlds, wandering freely along the river of great Tao. If that's really possible, then I must visit the river of destiny you mentioned. Hearing Zhang Buku bring up the river of destiny, the Buddha immortal smiled and said, if you go to the river of destiny, you must be wary of one person. Audiobook. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Who? That person's name is Lu Qiuxian. His Tao practice is profound and unfathomable. He will find everyone who enters the river of destiny and ask them some questions. You must not offend him. Lu Qiuxian. Zhang Buku noted the name, recognizing that this was a presence that even the Buddha immortal feared and not someone he could provoke. 100 years had passed since Xiao Wu's resurrection. Guan hadn't visited him, only occasionally glancing at him. This year, the name of Liya had once again spread within the 9-spirit continent. Liya and the saint of the Shaking Light Saint sect had arranged a life-and-death duel at the human world peak to settle their karma. The day of the duel had not yet arrived, but the news had spread wildly. In today's vast celestial spirit great world, albeit within the domain formerly belonging to the celestial spirit great earth, both Liya and the saint from Shaking Light Saint sect were world-renowned prodigies. I didn't expect Liya to gain such popularity. It seems the world is just SOSO. Back in the day, Liya had no power to fight back against me. Lv was boasting about his past accomplishments, within Shengtian, Jiangshi, Chenchuan, Celestial Cyan and Tian by listening. Having cultivated in the Taoist field of the beginningless for so many years, their cultivation levels had reached loose immortal, and with the divine skills and spells they possessed, they were full of confidence, feeling that no peer cultivators from the outside world could match them. Tian Bai tilted his head and said, Liya has the #1 divine sword in the world. Even if your cultivation level is higher than his, I'm afraid he's not someone you can defeat. Lv glared and said, relying on a magical treasure doesn't make a hero. I only believe in my physical body. Just then, an Xian appeared out of nowhere and said, think about what kind of magical treasure you all want. Master is preparing to craft magical treasures for everyone. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at Lv. Lv's face turned red, and he coughed falsely. Why are you looking at me? I've already had ideas. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 559. 10,000 Years of Refining Treasure. Guan's sect hearing Lv's words, Celestial Cyan, Jiangshi, and others couldn't help but roll their eyes. They hadn't been clinging to Lv. Instead, they began to discuss the magical treasures they each desired. An Xian was in charge of taking notes. After recording their needs, she would then go to find others. An hour later, an Xian arrived at Guan's courtyard. At the moment, Guan was sitting in front of a great cauldron. His right hand was burning with the 3 pristine true fire as he stared at the flame in his hand, his expression calm and contemplative. Master, I've asked everyone, an Xian said softly, standing next to Guan, holding a stack of paper in her hands. She found it strange. Given her master and the others' abilities, why did she need to run around? Direct communication would do. She figured her master was messing with her, but as a disciple, what could she say? Put it to the side for now, and assist your teacher in what comes next. Guan tossed the 3 pristine true fire beneath the cauldron, and then began to speak. As his voice fell, a considerable number of exotic ores and medicinal herbs flew out from his sleeves. And Zin's eyes lit up. She had long wanted to learn artifact refining and yearned for a magical treasure suitable for her. Guan remained seated, casting spells from a distance, transferring materials for artifact refining into the cauldron. An Xian approached the great cauldron, using her divine sense to peek into its contents. Guan was preparing to refine a magic artifact with his own Dao intent, creating a magical treasure unique to his path. It would be a drawn-out process. By the next day at noon, Guan had left an Xian to keep watch while he went to gather medicinal herbs alone. This task was crucial. He had restrained his murderous impulses and greed, so he must not be negligent in harvesting. His annual lifespan income had stabilized around 30 million years. He could continue to improve, but he didn't want to overexert himself or attract too much trouble. The celestial spirit Great World had restored order and, for the time being, faced no attacks from forces beyond. For Guan, that was the best kind of life. But destiny was unpredictable, and he couldn't draw the attention of beings from other great worlds to shatter this peace, especially from the celestial court. As long as the heavenly Tao loomed over the celestial spirit Great World, Guan couldn't ignore the threat of the celestial court. Time flies like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years passed. At noon, within the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a rocking chair, pulling up his attribute panel to check. Name: Guan S. Ia the Novelier. NET website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lifespan: 11,587/78, 746, 346, 201. Physique: primordial reincarnation, undying body. Cultivation level: balancing heaven, golden immortal realm, perfection. Nearly 80 billion years of lifespan. Guan pondered when to break through. He had already comprehensively improved himself. In theory, he could successfully break through with 100 billion years of lifespan, but there was always the chance of failure. It was better to wait until he had 200 billion years of lifespan to attempt the breakthrough. Guan stood up and sent a message to the celestial demon child. Shortly after, the celestial demon child appeared in the courtyard, looking excitedly at Guan and asking, "Master, is my magical treasure ready?" Since Guan mentioned 1,000 years ago that he planned to refine magical treasures for everyone, they had all been eagerly waiting. The longer the wait, the higher their expectations. Refining a magical treasure with Guan's Dao practice was not a challenge. A lengthy process meant one thing: their magical treasures would be powerful. Guan nodded with a smile, then waved his sleeve, and a white ribbon flew out from the great cauldron. It was as nimble as flowing cloud, quickly landing into the hands of the celestial demon child. The celestial demon child's eyes sparkled, instantly falling in love with the ribbon. "This is the year's colorful cloud ribbon. A Tao treasure that I've refined, imbued with the will of the great Tao. You can meditate on it for your daily cultivation. Your current Tao practice is insufficient to unleash its true power," Guan briefly explained. As his voice dropped, the year's colorful cloud ribbon burst into a bright light, enveloping the celestial demon child, and leaving her rooted to the spot. She began to inherit memories, another of Guan's touches, learning how to make the Tao treasure recognize its master. An Xian sat to the side, looking bemused. Over the years she hadn't seen how the year's colorful cloud ribbon was formed, and for most of the time, Guan was absent, with her being the one to watch over it. She even suspected that the Tao treasure had been completed long ago. When in doubt, she would ask. When facing her master, she never held back. "This is a Tao treasure, a treasure of the great Tao," Guan answered. "You can't see its shaping process. It must be sensed with your Tao. The fact that you haven't discovered it yet means your Tao isn't strong enough." Those words made an Xian feel ashamed. Guan often lectured them on the Tao, and each lecture was a matter of creation, a grand opportunity that cultivators from the outside world couldn't hope to encounter in their lifetimes. Yet she failed to grasp the Tao, which filled her heart with shame. Little did she know, their Tao intent was already strong enough. Many divine thought true immortals, even though stronger than them, couldn't match their Tao intent. Guan could tell that everyone in the dojo possessed the ability to fight beyond their realms, but he chose not to elaborate. With a heaven-balancing golden immortal as a teacher, such achievements were to be expected. While the celestial demon child was still assimilating memories, Guan turned and looked into the distance, mumbling to himself, still refusing to give up, huh? Hearing his words, an Xian asked curiously, Master, who are you talking about? Tang Kai? Hundreds of years ago, unable to resist, Tang Kai had gone to find Leia, even calling out to her in the woods outside the dojo and bidding her farewell before she departed. Guan smiled and said, Not her. I'm talking about a little demon you've never met. Seeing that he was reluctant to elaborate, an Xian didn't press further. In her view, her master, who often went out, must have spread opportunities far and wide, wondering when the Taoist field of the beginningless would gain new people. Time continued to speed up with her thoughts. The news of the celestial demon child receiving a Tao treasure quickly stirred up the dojo. Then the age-colored cloud silk enveloped the entire sky of the dojo, suppressing all within, immobilizing them, which drove everyone, including an Xian, insane. An Xian even felt that the age-colored cloud silk was second only to her master's fate pen and power. How could she not be excited? Guan maintained a Tao treasure every 1,000 years. The second to receive a Tao treasure was Shenzhen, and her Tao treasure was called the Void Rebirth Zither, whose strings could shake destiny, causality, and even reincarnation quite domineeringly. Next was the Blood Prison Great Saint, who received a saber named the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber, which contained the great Tao of slaughter and hinted at ruling the laws of destruction. Jiang Shi received the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, another Tao treasure for slaying and fighting, reminding him of the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber from the Investiture of the Gods, which he liked very much. Celestial Cyan received the Cyan Hongling Long Tower, and Tianbai received the White Spirit Exquisite Tower, both Tao treasures not inferior to the others. Together, their might was even greater, named after Yi Lan's White Spirit Sword and Guan's Cyan Hong Sword. And Shengtian received the Shaking God Spear, its essence filled with fighting will, second only to the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber in terms of killing power. Chen Chuan got the Reincarnation Tao Slaying Sword, able to comprehend the path of reincarnation. Guan hoped he could remember his past life on his own. LV Xian received the 12 Extreme Heaven Calming World Bead, 12 silver beads that could each create or devour worlds, encapsulating the path of devouring. An Xian got the 6 Paths Mirror, which could reflect reincarnation and send others into it. During the process of refining Tao treasures, Guan also pondered these great Tao. The 3,000 great Tao are omnipresent, and the Taoist Dominator skill could assist Guan in his contemplation directly. These Tao treasures all had the power to surpass Immortal Path Ultimate treasures, and would continue to grow stronger with their owners' achievements in the great Tao, their limits unfathomable. At the very least, these Tao treasures were stronger than the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword in Li Ya's hands. A Tao treasure every 1,000 years. Except for the Ghost Mother of Ephemera, everyone received a Tao treasure, indicating 9,000 years had passed. Guan, now over 20,000 years old, possessed a lifespan of over 340 billion years. The sunlight spilled down as everyone surrounded an Xian, inquiring about her 6 Paths Mirror, her face full of excited smiles. Finally done with work, it's time to make a breakthrough. Guan thought to himself silently. Looking back on the 9,000 years that had passed, even he couldn't help but marvel at how swiftly time had flown. As there were no external threats, these 9,000 years were uneventful, a repetition of days. From refining the age-colored cloud silk, Guan spent 10,000 years crafting Tao treasures for his disciples, and through this process he continued his cultivation. 10,000 years later, even without using lifespan evolution, his power had significantly improved. Master, aside from you, is there anyone else who can refine Tao treasures? Chen Chuan looked at Guan, asking curiously, holding the reincarnation Tao slaying sword. Even after 2,000 years, he was still enamored with it. The others followed suit. Looking at Guan, Guan smiled and said, Perhaps there are others, but your Tao treasures were forged with my great Tao. In the future, I could help strengthen your Tao treasures, and even use them to connect with you. At those words, everyone became even more excited, which meant they could rely on Guan any time. Even if they went out in the future, couldn't they? Master, why not establish a sect? There's no need to recruit many disciples, but at least we could set a banner. In the future, when we introduce ourselves, we can declare which immortal sect we belong to and also add luster to your reputation. Blood Prison Great Saint suddenly suggested, with the others echoing him. This was a plan they had long discussed, and were waiting for the right moment to propose. Guan had already heard their discussions over the years, and had also been contemplating this matter. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Seeing her not keeping a stern face, the others also smiled and actively discussed the power of the Tao treasures. Though an Xian was of the same generation as them, she had unconsciously established great prestige, and everyone knew Guan doted on her the most. Even Shenzhen would not act too willfully in front of an Xian. The ghost mother of ephemera stood at the back of the crowd with a fiery heart. Although she had not obtained a Tao treasure, she felt this was as it should be, given she was not Guan's disciple, and had entered the Taoist field of the beginningless as a prisoner. Guan summoning her was clearly a signal. She wanted a Tao treasure too. Perhaps I shouldn't be methodically completing my tasks. I should be more proactive. The master likes to pick medicinal herbs. Why not find a way to increase the production of medicinal herbs? The ghost mother of ephemera thought so as she looked at the people around her. In the reshaped Great Thousand World that had seen 10,000 years pass, the human world had taken on a new appearance. The Holy Court had completely dissolved, and now the War of Thousand Sects was raging, with no sect showing the dominance to unify the world, for the heavens and earth had become more vast than before. Despite the multitude of sects, this period had gained a unified definition. The primordial era. A new Great Thousand World was established, where the heavens met the earth and all things bloomed anew. Such a time was known as the primordial, the beginning of everything. The sects that had survived the previous era and made it to the primordial era had all become overlord-level forces. The Supreme Sect was one such power. Now the Supreme Sect dominated the 7 seas and the 3 continents, its influence surpassing even that of the 7-star spirit realm and the star sea congregations of old times. In the 3rd Medicine Valley, which 10,000 years later still held its esteemed position because the sect leader resided in this Medicine Valley. Inside a bamboo forest in the valley, Long Qing, wearing a loose white robe, sat cross-legged on the ground. With unruly hair, he had left his youthful features behind, becoming more composed and unfathomable, looking like a true enlightened being amid the forest. A figure appeared out of nowhere before him. It was Candlestar from the battle court. This reshaped Great Thousand World seems less like it has been reconstructed, and more like reborn. Many heaven and earth ultimate treasures have emerged between the heavens and earth. Over the years, I have fought over them as well. I didn't expect to encounter the blockade of profound Yuan-free immortal. Those old undying beings hidden in the depths of the universe have all returned. Candlestar sighed. Clashing swords with profound Yuan-free immortal made me fully realize that this world has truly become a part of the Great Thousand World. Just like the other vast worlds I've been to, there's always trouble brewing. Long Qing didn't open his eyes and said calmly, "What's wrong? Have you lost confidence in uniting Tian-E and replacing the battle court?" Candlestar chuckled. "How could that be? I've already seized that ultimate treasure. Am currently brewing the body refinement medicinal broth. In at most 100 years, Long Tongue will be able to cultivate the primordial chaos physique. The legends of the primordial era are not to be taken lightly. Every major world will go through such a period." The Long Tongue he spoke of was Long Qing's son, Long Tongue. Long Tongue had taken Candlestar as his master, and Candlestar was extremely dedicated to cultivating Long Tongue. Their relationship as teacher and pupil was even closer than that of father and son. Long Qing was not pleased to hear this. Since Long Jun had appeared, Candlestar had clearly started to treat Long Qing as though he were dead, and thus focused his cultivation efforts on Longqing's son. Candlestar discerned Longqing's upset mood, which he thought was caused by the fate he carried. He thus tried to comfort him. Longjun has been gone for thousands of years. Both the battle court and the silent destruction god emperor have yet to emerge. Perhaps your destiny has changed. Candlestar still shuddered at the memory of the great war from 10,000 years ago. Such a mighty celestial spirit god was exterminated so easily. He had not seen Gu An's true form, but he guessed that the person was the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Not just him, most of the beings at the level of free immortals, and those in the Tao Fruit realm made the same guess, contributing to the rise of the Supreme Sect. Now, the Supreme Sect already had several divine thought true immortals under Candlestar's manipulation. Aside from those elders who had karmic ties with Guan, the Elder Hall had undergone a complete change of blood. With Longqing out of sight, Candlestar held the greatest power in the Supreme Sect. Most of the current disciples of the Supreme Sect were born in the primordial era, so they didn't see Candlestar as an outsider. When they joined the sect, Candlestar was already the strongest in the Supreme Sect, and to this day, all disciples look up to him. As for the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, that had become an ethereal legend. But with the existence of the heaven-repairing platform, no one doubted the veracity of this tale. Hearing that destiny might have changed, Longqing opened his eyes. He looked at Candlestar and asked, if the Great Thousand World were to develop to its peak, could it confront the battle court? Candlestar pondered. The battle court controls several Great Thousand Worlds and has risen above them. Of course, the potential of the Great Thousand World is limitless. Some powerful Great Thousand Worlds are even territories the battle court dares not tread. Are there really such Great Thousand Worlds? Longqing asked with raised eyebrows. Having recovered the memories of his past life, he knew well the might of the battle court. However, he had been born in this universe in his past life, and was not familiar with other Great Thousand Worlds. Of course, Hongmeng, 9 Extremes, Taisher, Taiqing, Taimei. These 5 Great Thousand Worlds are places the battle court dares not overstep. Although I haven't been to them, the Lord of the War Court is extremely wary of these worlds. Moreover, besides the Great Thousand Worlds, there are other planes of existence. They may not exist according to world rules, but they too have nurtured incredibly potent forces. Candlestar paused and said with heavy emphasis, although the battle court is strong, it is far from the strongest. As long as you maintain hope, your limits will certainly surpass theirs. I've always felt that the Long clan is at the core of the battle court. Sooner or later, the Long clan will surpass the battle court and reclaim its power. Upon hearing this, Longqing's eyes lit up with spirit. Just then, a woman appeared out of thin air beside them. Father Yitsong has returned, seeking justice for his father. He wields an immortal path ultimate treasure, and has already penetrated the first sea domain. He might arrive at Taitsong continent today. The woman was Longqing's daughter, Longya, and her expression was complex when she mentioned Yitsong. Longqing said pensively, in the end he has grown up. 9,000 years ago, I felt his destiny pattern was extraordinary. Candlestar, however, said dismissively, what does having an extraordinary destiny pattern matter? He shouldn't have trampled on the face of the Supreme Sect. Personal grudges could be discussed privately. Let him come. It'll make him understand that even with his exceptional talent, 9,000 years of cultivation is far from enough to shake the foundation of the Supreme Sect. Longqing hesitated for a moment and then said, don't harm his life after all. He was once my disciple. Some misunderstandings, I think, should be discussed face to face. With a huff, Candlestar vanished on the spot. Once he had gone, Longya let out a sigh of relief. She came up to Longqing and whispered, Father, I've heard that Yitsong has cultivated the primordial chaos body, astonishing the heavens and startling the ghosts. Even the saintess of the Guangyuan Saint sect admires him. Not only is his cultivation level formidable, but he also has a powerful backing now. Longqing glanced at her and retorted, so what's your point? Longya glared and said, what point can I have? I'm only reminding you that I did let him down, but you were the one who truly pushed him away from the Supreme Sect. You cared too much for the supreme sect, causing your disciple to suffer. With that, Longye stomped away. Longqing wasn't angry. He looked up slightly towards the bamboo forest above and murmured, "Master, faced with such a dilemma, what would you choose?" He had taken on many disciples over 10,000 years, but as the sect leader, he always considered the disciples of the supreme sect more, hoping his own disciples could bear more since they had enjoyed more of the supreme sect's resources. The return of Yitsong did not alarm Longqing. It merely made him miss his master. Chapter 561. Breakthrough to Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm Perfection Hidden Spirit Palace. After Guan picked the medicinal herbs, he looked towards Chun Luo and Su Ling, who were cultivating in the distance, who were now at the loose immortal realm. A long process from loose immortal realm to wandering immortal realm. Even disciples within the Taoist field of the beginningless were pushing through the loose immortal realm. After so many years, Chen Chuan had not encountered another mysterious cause and effect attack, and Guan was wondering whether or not to let Chen Luo and Su Ling go. Not everyone enjoyed staying in one place to tirelessly cultivate. Deep-sea dragon carp came to Guan's side, still dressed in white. Although his features still carried the soft beauty of a woman, compared to 10,000 years ago, he carried a more distinct presence, making it clear he was not a female demon. "Master, do you need me to call them?" Deep-sea dragon carp asked respectfully. He was also at the loose immortal realm, but his minor realm far surpassed both Chen Luo and Su Ling compared to the two. Deep-sea dragon carp's heart was simple. He just wanted to cultivate. Initially, to enter the hidden spirit palace, he had endured countless hardships, and he still remembered them, so he had no desire to leave. "No need. What magical treasure do you want?" Guan asked while stretching his muscles. "Magical treasure?" Deep-sea dragon carp's eyes lit up. He pondered for a moment, and said, "I want a large flag, preferably one that could control the ocean." Although he was already aware of the existence beyond the celestial boundary, his heart was still with the ocean. As he read more books, he also began to form a goal, which was to dominate the ocean. Wuxia world. Sight Wuxia world. Sight. He wanted all creatures in the ocean to worship him as their lord. After hearing his request, Guan just nodded slightly without saying much. Refining 10 Tao treasures had not made him feel tired, because in this process he was also comprehending the great Tao, and looking back, it still felt wonderful. Thus, he decided to continue crafting Tao treasures. Of course, not everyone could receive his Tao treasures. Like Chen Luo and Su Ling, Guan saving them had already been in consideration of Chen Chuan's face. As his realm continued to rise, Guan naturally became more emotionally stable, making it even harder for someone to truly find a place in his heart and garner his concern than reaching the heavens. He was inherently someone who kept old loyalties. "Go and cultivate, I'll be leaving soon." Seeing deep-sea dragon carp standing by not willing to leave, Guan spoke to send him away. He continued to stand there, admiring sections of the medicine garden in the hidden spirit palace, while he activated the lifespan breakthrough function. You have initiated the lifespan breakthrough function. Based on your current realm, you have been offered the following breakthrough locations. 1. Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens. 2. Ascending to Yellow Heaven. 3. Taiwei Earth Core. 4. Netherworld Deep Sea. 5. Desperate Celestial Tomb. 6. Path of the Great Tao. 7. Azura Abyss. 8. Misty Immortal Court. 9. Ling Mountain. Many of these places had appeared before. This time Guan directly ruled out Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens. He carefully pondered these names, and he was very interested in Ling Mountain. In Wuxia mythology, Ling Mountain was the Buddhist sect's dojo. Now that Celestial Court had appeared, he was not sure if this Ling Mountain was the same as the one in the mythology. Despite his curiosity, Guan did not want to go to Ling Mountain. He vaguely felt that the waters of Ling Mountain were very deep. Other places looked very expansive, while Ling Mountain seemed like just one mountain. Even though the lifespan breakthrough transfer locations are temporarily safe, he did not want to risk it. For him, the bigger the better for breakthrough locations, so even if anomalies were created, no one would intrude into the lifespan barrier. Thinking it over, Guan decided to go to the desperate celestial tomb. There should be no powerful beings in the tomb, or if there were, they would be sealed. Also, for some reason, seeing the desperate celestial tomb, Guan felt a connection to this place. Transporting to desperate celestial tomb will consume 10 billion years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? Continue. The thought had just arisen when an unusual state that he had not felt in a long time enveloped Guan. He closed his eyes, losing all senses. After a while, Guan felt his feet touch the ground. He immediately initiated the lifespan barrier, and then opened his eyes. What entered his eyes were a series of ruined palaces, and ancient stone pillars towering into the clouds, the ground undulating unevenly. No flowers or grass in sight, only yellow soil and rocks, with the far-off dust swirling into the sky, making the end of the scene indistinct. Vast and desolate, this was Guan's first impression. The Tao spiritual qi here was very dense, even denser than in the celestial extreme 9 heavens, but the aura of the Tao here was not as abundant, with the path of cause and effect being particularly outstanding. This was actually good for Guan, even though he had begun to explore other paths of the Tao. The path of cause and effect was still his main focus. Looking around, Guan did not feel the presence of any living beings. The desperate celestial tomb was bigger than he had anticipated, endless to his heart-eyes sight. He was curious whether the whole world was inside the celestial tomb, or if this place was hiding it. He sat down on the spot and pulled up his attribute panel to check. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 2587/338, 542, 709, 068. Physique: primordial reincarnation, undying body. Cultivation level: balancing heaven, golden immortal realm, perfection. Over 330 billion years of lifespan. This time, he would surely succeed in breaking through. Guan was filled with confidence. The last time he broke through, each crossing the tribulation had to wait 100 million years. Now that he had improved in all aspects, the waiting time needed for crossing the tribulation should not increase by many times. He immediately invested 10 billion years of lifespan into his cultivation level. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 200 million years. You forcefully assaulted the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm, using your great achievement with the Taoist Dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation, but you did not endure the 3,000 Golden Immortal Breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation failed. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 400 million years. You forcefully assaulted the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm, using your great achievement with the Taoist Dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation, but you did not endure the 3,000 Golden Immortal Breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation failed. It was indeed the Taiqing Golden Immortal. Once every 200 million years for a crossing the tribulation, not bad. In reality, a failed tribulation could mean severe injuries or even annihilation. Being able to restore cultivation level and condition within 200 million years at this level was rare. Quickly, the 10 billion years of lifespan were exhausted, all efforts ending in failure. Guan was not panicked at all. This was just the beginning. Another 10 billion years of lifespan. One notification after another popped up, but Guan's attention was drawn to a huge palace in the distance. That massive palace was over 1,000,000 miles away from him. Compared to the surrounding structures, it was exceptionally magnificent. The gates alone were over 10,000 zhang high. For a moment earlier, Guan felt a faint and eerie presence from that palace that disappeared quickly, as if it was his imagination. It seemed that this desperate celestial tomb hid secrets. After all the prompts on his panel disappeared, Guan continued to invest 10 billion years of lifespan. Failure. Invest again. Failure. Invest again. Finally, success. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 5,900,000,000 years. You forcefully assaulted the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm, using your great achievement with the Taoist Dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation. You endured the 3,000 Golden Immortal Breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation succeeded. Your cultivation level broke through to the early stage of Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 100 billion years. Your cultivation level improved. A massive amount of Dao spiritual qi immediately surged towards Guan. He didn't stop but continued to invest lifespan. The lifespan required to move from the early stage to the mid-stage of the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm far exceeded his imagination, costing him 200 billion years of lifespan. That was truly frightening. However, thinking of the Nine Heavens Siam bird who was only in the early stage of Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm despite being over 200 billion years old, he felt more at ease. After all, this was the Taiqing Golden Immortal, a realm unimaginable to the beings of the celestial spirit great world. He continued to invest lifespan until his cultivation level reached the perfection of Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm. From early stage to perfection, he had spent nearly 100 billion years of lifespan altogether, and he still had over 1.8 billion years of lifespan left. Meanwhile, anomalies began to appear in the desperate celestial tomb. Dao spiritual qi surged from all directions, forming devastating tornadoes, and runes appeared intermittently in the sky, akin to thunder, oppressively intense. Guan turned his gaze back to the distant huge palace. That trace of eerie presence he had caught earlier reappeared. His eyes intently focused on that half-open giant door, behind which was darkness, ominously severe. After a while, as Guan basked in the luminance of the great Tao, he squinted because he saw a figure walking out from that door. The figure was as large as an ordinary person, seeming minuscule like dust within the doorway. From its shape, it seemed to be a person. Chapter 562. Sin, the catastrophe of the supreme sect under Gu An's gaze. A young boy with a full head of black hair walked out from the door. He looked to be just over 10 years old, very thin, dressed in a pair of tattered pants, his face smeared with dirt. He stood in the shadow of the gate, looking around nervously. Sin Nirvana Realm 0/9999/9999. His cultivation level in the Nirvana realm wasn't particularly strong, but his causality was extremely complex. Even someone as powerful as Guan couldn't see through it. The tangled, complicated causality was intricately related to the Tao rules within the desperate celestial tomb. At first glance, Guan felt like the boy was imprisoned here by the great Tao. But the key question was, how could he be 0 years old? Just born? Guan grew curious about Sin, but his immediate priority was to make a breakthrough. After watching for a while, he closed his eyes. The commotion caused by the breakthrough soon enveloped the entire desperate celestial tomb, making Sin at the gate even more nervous, to the point where he retracted back into the door, only poking his head out. As Guan closed his eyes, time flew by rapidly. An hour later, Guan successfully broke through to the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm. The state of being a Taiqing Golden Immortal still revolved around the elevation of the Golden Immortal Tao fruit, above which appeared a patch of azure sky evolved from the Taiqing, reminding Guan of the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao encompassed the Great Thousand World just like this. Wuxia world. Sight reaching the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm led to a transformation of his destiny pattern. Unbound by the constraints of the Great Tao, even without passing through a world gate, Guan could leap out of the Great World. He could even glimpse the domains beyond the Great Thousand World. Nothingness, chaos, utter emptiness, without even light. The desperate celestial tomb, like the Great Thousand World, though not as vast as the celestial spirit Great World, had a similar structure to the Great Thousand World. Aside from a leap in mana, his heart eye began to transform, and his divine sense too underwent transformation. As a Taiqing Golden Immortal, he could come and go as he pleased, his soul body reaching his thoughts instantly without any hindrance in the journey. Within the lifespan barrier, Guan's body shone with a strong light. Tao spiritual qi formed whirlwinds around him, appearing to hide thousands of stars flickering in brilliance. After fully stepping into the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm, Guan started challenging higher minor realms. Only after reaching the late stages of the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm did his thoughts return to reality. And when he opened his eyes again, his whole persona underwent a drastic change. He became more transcendent, exuding an aura of unparalleled dominance. Taiqing Golden Immortal, the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal Tao fruit, and also the sixth realm of the Tao fruit realm, The great Tao told Guan that very few beings reached this layer of the realm, a domain even the great Tao couldn't entirely restrict. Guan could feel that his golden immortal Tao fruit had reached its limit. Another breakthrough would grant him even greater favors, and his Tao fruit too would welcome a new transformation. The Tao spiritual qi continued to pour into Guan's body, the potent power of the great Tao surrounding him, as if protecting his breakthrough. Guan's gaze once again turned towards the distance. The giant palace gate no longer bore sight of Sin. He felt somewhat wistful, a feeling that left him confused. His intuition told him that he had some connection with Sin, a connection he couldn't recall, possibly because it pertained to the future. He felt it was likely related to lifespan reincarnation. Perhaps Sin had some connection with one of his reincarnation bodies from a past life. From the moment he saw the desperate celestial tomb, he had this sense, as if something here was waiting for him, something he was compelled to face. Guan gazed at the massive palace while lost in contemplation. Even though he had successfully made a breakthrough, he couldn't fully decipher the causality of the desperate celestial tomb. However, he was certain that the entire world was a celestial tomb, burying countless great powers' causality. He could even envision the scenes from before their deaths. The desperate celestial tomb seemed quiet but was truly terrifying. Without the lifespan barrier, just 1 hour in the tomb would see Guan eaten away by mysterious forces within, making escape impossible. Whatever this force was, Guan couldn't tell, and he even sensed that this force was no less formidable than the heavenly Tao. Time continued to pass. Guan had reached perfection in the Taiqing Golden Immortal Realm, but the strange phenomena within the desperate celestial tomb persisted. Aside from Sin, he detected no other presences, as if the desperate celestial tomb housed only Sin, a living spirit. Once his cultivation level stopped growing, Guan stood up, choosing to teleport back. As for the confusion brought about by Sin, he decided to let time provide the answers, for with the lifespan breakthrough, there was always the possibility of returning in the future. After a while, Guan reappeared inside the hidden spirit palace. He pulled up his attribute panel, and just the breakthrough of the lifespan barrier alone had cost him 70 billion years of lifespan, leaving him with around 100 billion years. That's fine, there's lifespan left. After giving the deep-sea dragon carp that had already begun its cultivation practice a glance, Guan disappeared on the spot. Though the old friends were no longer present, the memories of the past were so beautiful. Whenever he reminisced, his mood would become cheerful. Nowadays, very few people within the Supreme Sect could recognize Guan. These people are highly respected and often in seclusion, not the type to stroll around the outer sect city. Guan just stood in front of the library pavilion, looking at the building, lost in memories. The celestial vault behind him began to change color. Rolling thunderclouds approached from the horizon, quickly covering the sky above the outer sect city. As the world darkened, Guan's thoughts returned to the present. He turned around to look, and at the end of the earth, lightning flashed and thunder roared as if the apocalypse was upon them. Profound Yuan Free Immortal Realms Grand Elder Zhu Xing couldn't stop Yitsong, or more accurately, couldn't stop the Immortal Path Ultimate Treasure in Yitsong's hand. The soul inside that Immortal Path Ultimate Treasure belonged to a heaven-encompassing free immortal from Luotian. And because it was just a soul, it could only exert the strength of a profound Yuan Free Immortal. Combined with the Immortal Path Ultimate Treasure, it had the power to sweep through its realm. Guan saw through the origin of that soul at a glance. This soul, named the Heaven-Supporting Ancestor, came from another great thousand world. When the celestial spirit god was preparing to destroy the great thousand world, he took advantage of the chaos in the great Taos order and sneaked in. He was fleeing a pursuit, with transcendent forces seeking to execute him. Later, the heaven-supporting ancestor encountered Yitsong. He was attracted by Yitsong's physique, and after thousands of years of companionship, they built a deep connection. Yitsong was determined to seek revenge, and the heaven-supporting ancestor could only support him. After defeating Zhu Xing, Yitsong rapidly advanced towards the Supreme Sect. Yitsong, who was over 9,000 years old, had already reached the cultivation level of a loose immortal, and was not far from the wandering immortal realm. His talent could indeed be considered top-tier in the current era. However, his strength was mainly due to his reliance on the heaven-supporting ancestor. The world was unaware of the existence of the heaven-supporting ancestor, so Yitsong's talent was overestimated even more. Simultaneously, on the edge of the continent, above the rolling thunderclouds, a man in black clothes advanced against the wind. His face was stern with sharp eyebrows and eyes. His right hand held an ancient cyan tower that continuously burst forth with rainbow light, battering the sea of clouds. He was Yitsong. Rumble. The outer Sec city shook, and Guan watched as the city-protecting array rose. Pedestrians on the streets hurried along, disturbed by Yitsong's arrival. Guan turned and headed toward the heaven-repairing platform. He could foresee that Yitsong would not bring disaster to the Supreme Sect. Once Yitsong met Longqing and they, as master and disciple, broke ties, Yitsong would completely sever his karma, and then truly embark on his own path in life. The primordial chaos body was no simple matter, a notch above Zhu Zai's primordial cause and effect body. Of course, that was just the physique. The potential of a cultivator still depended on their comprehension. The feud between Yitsong and Longqing amused Guan, but he did not support either of their perspectives. Suddenly, he thought of Ji Xiaoyu, who had also severed her familial ties. Such were the matters of the human world, always with its imperfections. Ji Xiaoyu had long returned to the yin-yang immortal domain, which was not part of the great heaven and earth, and remained in the cosmic void of the universe. Guan occasionally kept an eye on Ji Xiaoyu, who was striving to reach the Dao fruit realm. Despite the news of the reshaping of the Great Thousand World, Ji Xiaoyu had no intention of coming back to see Guan. Guan could hear her aspirations. She wanted to reach the same realm as Guan before she would meet him again. Naturally, he respected her competitive spirit. For the human world, 10,000 years was a long time, but for Ji Xiaoyu, especially in seclusion, it felt short, so she did not feel it had been long since she saw Guan. Thinking of Ji Xiaoyu, Guan then thought of Yilan. Having entered reincarnation for so long, Yilan had not yet reincarnated in the celestial spirit great world. Guan decided to spend time looking for her next. With the Dao Destruction Destiny Seal, as a Taiqing Golden Immortal, finding Yilan should not be difficult for Guan. As Guan thought this, he walked down one street after another. He finally arrived in front of the heaven-repairing platform. The heaven-repairing platform maintained its original appearance, with many figures on it. Swordsmanship was still guarding the heaven-splitting axe, sitting cross-legged in mid-air, exuding a celestial demeanor. The pressure of the immortal path ultimate treasure enveloped Outer Sec City, but Swordsmanship kept his eyes closed, an air of calmness that would not change even if the heavens fell. Looking at Swordsmanship, Guan felt reassured. Swordsmanship was definitely the most devoted person to him, even more devout than profound mysterious Zhenren from the Mountain God Temple. Unless his family faced trouble, he had guarded the heaven-repairing platform for over 20,000 years, protecting the honor of supporting Dao Sword Venerable. Guan also had not treated him unfairly, occasionally using Dao intent to guide him in sword enlightenment. Now Swordsmanship was also in the loose immortal realm, his sword Dao achievement not much less than Chen Chuan. Once the inheritance of the heaven-splitting axe was handed over, Guan would give Swordsmanship a chance to follow him. Guan had steeds, disciples, and demon pets, but he lacked a sword attendant by his side. At this moment, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of the heaven-splitting axe, and the disciples who were queuing up were about to verbally abuse the newcomer, but upon recognizing who it was, they hastily bent over to salute. The visitor was none other than the sect leader of the Supreme Sect, Longqing. Longqing paid no attention to the surrounding disciples. He gazed at the heaven-splitting axe, remaining silent. Swordsmanship was still meditating mid-air. He glanced at Longqing and then closed his eyes again. With a pat on the shoulder from the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, and inheriting the sword intent, Swordsmanship held a very high status in the Supreme Sect. Even when facing Longqing, he could act as a senior, and Longqing did indeed respect him. Boom, boom, boom. The distant rumbling of thunder grew louder and louder. The oppression belonging to the immortal path ultimate treasure was approaching. Candlestar appeared out of nowhere beside Longqing and said solemnly, "Behind him, there is someone with a higher cultivation level than me. The Supreme Sect cannot stop him. He is the foremost cultivator of the Supreme Sect, and below him, there is a huge gap in cultivation level." Hearing his words, Longqing's expression did not change. Candlestar wanted to say more, but he suddenly turned his head. The city protecting array of the outer sect city shattered abruptly, and a rainbow light came crashing down from the sky, forcing Candlestar to raise his palm and protect Longqing and the surrounding disciples with his own mana. As the light dissipated and the Jin Qi overflowed, Yitsong revealed himself, with cracks appearing on the platform under his feet and stones flying. Zhou Yijian opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the spot beneath Yitsong's feet, his sword brows furrowing tightly. Holding a green ancient tower, Yitsong ignored Candlestar. His gaze fell on Longqing's back, and he said, "Master, long time no see." Longqing slowly turned around. Facing his former disciple, his expression was calm, devoid of any emotion. Their eyes met, each seeing only the other. "What do you want?" Longqing asked. Yitsong responded, "I seek justice. I want you, Master, to publicly condemn the Cui family and avenge my sister." Longqing said nothing, only quietly looked at him. Yitsong slightly tilted his chin upward, a cold light twinkling in his eyes. He said with a sneer, "It seems that after 9,000 years, the status of the Cui family in the Supreme Sect has risen ever higher. Master, you also can't bear to deal with them, can you?" Longqing stared at him and said, "The one who murdered your sister was already executed. Do you really want the entire Cui family to join your sister in death? Do you know how many people are in the Cui family, and what the Supreme Sect would lose without them?" Yitsong stepped forward. The green ancient tower shone with a dazzling light. A strong wind rose from the ground, and his black robe fluttered intensely, enhancing the oppressive force he displayed. "He is dead, but my sister, as a disciple of the Supreme Sect, died quietly. Is that really right? Moreover, that person was just a pawn. Who truly wanted to harm my sister, Master? Do you really not know?" Yitsong pressed aggressively, the aura of the green ancient tower making the heaven-repairing platform tremble. Candlestar couldn't help but yell out, "Enough! That member of the Cui family has long left the Supreme Sect. Do you expect the Supreme Sect to spend manpower to hunt him down? How vast is the world for your sister? How much should the Supreme Sect have to sacrifice for you to be satisfied?" The Cui family allowed the mastermind to escape and had the murderer executed. The Supreme Sect indeed had no way to deal with them, especially since the Cui family helped develop the sect, and now counted among the top 3 families within the sect. Candlestar often encountered such contradictions. What he could do was to have the murderer pay with his life, but it was impossible to completely eradicate them because the development of power needed to consider benefits. With this loud yell, the aura of profound Yuan-free immortal surged toward Yitsong, making him slide backward. A phantom jumped out from the green ancient tower. This was an old Taoist with white hair. The heaven-supporting ancestor hovered in the air, looking down at Candlestar, and said, "Fellow Taoist, you should not belong to this great thousand world. Why are you so stubborn about the rules of the human world? If you consider interests, do you think it is worth offending me and a primordial chaos body for a family that oppresses the weak?" Seeing him appear, Candlestar's expression darkened and he said, "I want to ask you too. With your high level of Tao practice, do you really think his stubborn nature won't bring him great disaster?" The heaven-supporting ancestor had no expression on his face and said, "This is his only request in this life, and as his teacher, I must help him. In the human world, a day as a teacher, a lifelong father. In the great thousand world, a teacher should protect his disciple more. I do not care what happens to him in the future. I just want to support him now." Hearing these words, Longqing's expression changed. Zhou Yijian looked at the heaven-supporting ancestor. He could feel the other's strength, but he was not concerned. The supporting Tao sword venerable had left many years ago. But Zhou Yijian always felt that the old man was still watching over the Supreme Sect. Chapter 564. The myth of the Supreme Sect entangled the entire Supreme Sect. Heaven-supporting ancestors' voice echoed throughout the Supreme Sect, allowing every single person within the sect to hear him loud and clear. In these days, the grudges between Yi Tsang and the sect had already been dug out by the disciples, and with the powerful Cui family already unpopular among some, the true story emerged against those who fanned the flames. Though they sympathized with Yi Tsang, they could not accept that he would jeopardize the whole Supreme Sect for a personal vendetta. They couldn't just give up resistance out of sympathy and wait for Yi Tsang to execute them, right? Heaven-supporting ancestors' words instead ignited the wrath of the Supreme Sect members, and more disciples flew toward the outer sect city. Longqing's expression also turned ice-cold. Yi Tsang had brought up the master-disciple relationship, which indeed caused him regret, but with heaven-supporting ancestor threatening the entire Supreme Sect, the shame and regret in his heart were instantly replaced by murderous intent. He glared at heaven-supporting ancestor and said coldly, "Do you really think you can act recklessly within the Supreme Sect?" As he spoke, a trace of gray aura emanated from his eyes, making his whole persona appear even more eerie. He was not as advanced in cultivation level as heaven-supporting ancestor, but he had his own reliance. That was the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. Zhua Yijian, seated cross-legged in midair, also spoke up. Right and wrong, grudges and favors can be discussed, but if you want to threaten the entire Supreme Sect, I advise you to take back these words, otherwise your cultivation level won't withstand the consequences of such karma. Seeing even a loose immortal so arrogant, heaven-supporting ancestor thought these people had gone mad. Wuxia world. Sight, could it be they believed supporting Dao Sword Venerable was still protecting them? Heaven-supporting ancestors' divine sense enveloped the entire Supreme Sect, and completely failed to detect the presence of supporting Dao Sword Venerable, not to mention a presence comparable to Candle Stars. As heaven-supporting ancestor was thinking, figures descended from the sky, and Longqing's daughter Longye had also arrived. Seeing her, Yi Tsang's eyes showed a subtle change. Longye looked at Yi Tsang with a complex expression, faintly resentful, which made Yi Tsang unable to look her in the eye. A handsome man in a gold-embroidered white robe stood in front of Longqing. He was tall, his long hair tied up in a crown, exuding an unbeatable elegance, the pride in his expression undeniable. Yi Tsang, every debt has its debtor, every grievance its culprit. Master didn't support you as you wished, but if you honestly ask yourself, did Master mistreat you? Before you left the Supreme Sect, did you get less cultivation resources than I did? Despite conflicts with that disciple from the Cui family, you both vied for the same opportunity. He died. Wouldn't the Cui family think of you? Isn't it because of your lack of foresight? This handsome man was Longqing's son Longteng, and he spoke with the fierce momentum of a wild beast. He stared intently at Yi Tsang and said, "All you know is hatred, but what about the grace the Supreme Sect has shown you? Because of hatred towards one person, one family, you would involve the entire sect? Do you really think you are without guilt? Since you hold your sister in such high regard, why didn't you consider her when you were fighting? Did you think we are obligated to guard your sister for life, watching over her every moment?" These successive interrogations made Yi Tsang furrow his brows. Heaven-supporting ancestor did not speak further. He had no personal grievance with the Supreme Sect. He wanted to see how Yi Tsang would respond. In his view, Yi Tsang should experience such a confrontation and come to a clear understanding of himself. The people who have been kind to you, you only demand more. By what right do you act this way? Longteng said forcefully, and even though heaven-supporting ancestor and immortal path ultimate treasure were mighty, he showed no fear, and even took a step forward while speaking. Seeing Longteng's stance, Candle Star revealed a smile on his face. Even though Yi Tsang had cultivated the primordial chaos body, in Candle Star's eyes, he still didn't measure up to Longteng. Feel it's unfair? When Yi Tsang was the favored one by Longqing, did Yi Tsang ever consider how Longteng felt being neglected? Granted, Longqing was somewhat biased in his manner and relationships. The closer they were, the more he may have taken them for granted, mainly because his energy and resources were limited. In his view, there was no need to make a big effort to win over his own children. Perhaps, due to a lifetime of drifting from one life to the next, he cared deeply about how outsiders felt under his command. Candlestar didn't think such a fault was a big deal. The present issue wasn't about what Longqing did wrong. It was that he wasn't as strong as Heaven's supporting ancestor. If he was stronger, would he have allowed Heaven's supporting ancestor such insolence? More and more people appeared on the Heaven repairing platform, persuading Yi Tsang, who had once shown peerless talent. It was too much of a pity for such a genius to become the supreme sect's enemy, especially when the conflict could be resolved. Why go to such lengths to settle the score? Yi Tsang watched his former sect friends and teachers, feeling somewhat swayed in his heart. But whenever he thought of his sister's death, he just couldn't let go. The very reason he had left the supreme sect with peace of mind was his belief that Master would take care of his sister. But instead of disciplining the Cui family, Master had let them kill his sister. Why should he? His master was the sect leader. Yi Tsang's anger and intent to kill burst forth in his heart, and the more people tried to persuade him, the more he hated. From the beginning to the end, the Cui family never showed up, and the supreme sect did not attempt to capture them. It was as if the Cui family were the victims. Master. Yi Tsang's voice was deep, drowning out all other noises between heaven and earth. Heaven supporting ancestor and Longqing both turned to look at him. Both were his masters, but one protected him while the other stood on the opposing side. Zhou Yijian sensed Yi Tsang's murderous aura, and his expression shifted. He was about to stand up when suddenly, his gaze caught a figure, and he widened his eyes in excitement. He did not exclaim aloud but quickly repressed his emotions. Heaven supporting ancestor said expressionlessly, "Speak, whatever you wish to do, your master will support you." As his words fell, the temperature around plummeted. The ancient green tower constantly burst forth with rainbow light, casting clarity on everyone's faces. Yi Tsang took a deep breath and said, "Kill. Kill until." "Young man, watch your words. Some things can't be taken back," once said. A voice suddenly came from behind, and in an instant Heaven's supporting ancestor, who was floating in mid-air, felt a hand press on his shoulder, and he found himself crashing down onto the Heaven repairing platform. Having become a remnant soul, Heaven's supporting ancestor had almost forgotten what it felt like to physically fall. He instinctively turned his head and saw a figure standing behind him, one hand resting on his shoulder. Everyone was frightened by Gu An's sudden appearance, including Yi Tsang, whose eyelids twitched wildly. That someone had captured the mighty heaven-supporting ancestor so easily. Upon seeing Guan, Longqing felt relieved, but then thinking of something, his face showed a shade of shame. An elder who had lived through the last era widened his eyes in disbelief. Just as he was about to speak, he seemed to remember something and swallowed his words. It was also Candlestar's first time seeing Guan, but Gu An's figure felt familiar to him. Wait, wasn't this the mysterious figure who had suppressed the celestial spirit god? Candlestar instinctively glanced at Longqing, and seeing his expression, felt even more certain about his guess. He breathed a sigh of relief while also feeling a bit nervous. This was the terrifying existence who had effortlessly suppressed the celestial spirit god. He couldn't fathom what such a being might be thinking. Heaven's supporting ancestor was unable to move. He couldn't even retract his immortal path ultimate treasure. Waves of shock surged in his heart. Guan ignored Heaven's supporting ancestor beneath his hand and looked at Yi Tsang, saying, "Ultimately, your enemies are not here. Many things can be mended. You can avenge the dead, but you should also cherish the living." Yi Tsang saw Heaven's supporting ancestor pressed to the ground, unable to even turn around to look at him, and this filled him with fear. Guan looked so young but gave off an unfathomable aura. He nervously asked, "And who are you?" He had voiced the question on everyone's mind. Afraid that Yi Tsang might offend Guan, Longqing hastily barked, "Aren't you going to kneel and kowtow to your ancestor?" Ancestor? Yi Tsang stood there stunned, along with Long Tung, Long Ya, and the other members of the Long family. This person was Longqing's master? Wait, wasn't Longqing's master? More and more people started to realize this point. Some gasped, while others trembled and knelt straight on the ground. Yi Song also came to the realization of Gu An's identity, his mind buzzing. He stood still, unsure of what to do. Gu An's left hand lifted, and with a wave through the air, a man appeared beneath his hand, his shoulder grasped by Guan. This man was handsomely dressed, his face handsome, but it carried a hint of malevolence. His expression was baffled, obviously startled by the sudden turn of events. When he saw Yi Song, his face greatly changed. Yi Song's notoriety spread far and wide, and he had always dreaded encountering Yi Song. Upon seeing him, Yi Song's eyes instantly reddened, his murderous intent irrepressible. Chui Xianlin had just opened his mouth when he was suppressed by a force. Guan couldn't be bothered to listen to their dispute. Through causal calculations he could understand the truth. Chui Xianlin's brother fancied Longya, but Longya was close to Yi Song, leading to Chui Xianlin's brother warning Yi Song several times in private, which resulted in a grudge between the two men. The reason Chui Xianlin's brother died was that he attacked Yi Song and, in a twist of fate, was killed by a demon beast. After Yi Song left, Chui Xianlin returned to Supreme Sect only to discover his brother's death. He wanted Yi Song to suffer the same pain. The Chui family was also in distress. They were wary of Longqing and Candle Star. Otherwise, they would not have sent Chui Xianlin away. Whether it was the Chui family or Yi Song, both paid a price. Supreme Sect had also discussed this matter with the Chui family, and ultimately, it was left in the past. But the Chui family never dared let Chui Xianlin return due to Candle Star's domineering actions. Guan stared at Yi Song and said, "You're avenging your sister, and your master helps you, that's all fine. But you must also allow your master's ancestor to help him. What do you think?" Yi Song, overwhelmed, was even more unsure of what to do. The thought that the person before him was the myth of Supreme Sect threw his mind into turmoil. Longqing quickly approached Guan and said, "Master, Kanger is just a bit impulsive. It's all my fault as his master." He was worried that Guan was angry, always believing that Supreme Sect was Gu An's soft spot, which was why he valued the sect so highly. Guan looked towards Longqing with a calm gaze and said, "You've disappointed me." At those words, Longqing's complexion drastically changed, and unable to maintain the air of a sect leader, he knelt down anxiously. Seeing the sect leader kneel, all Supreme Sect cultivators knelt in unison, Zhuijian included. Chapter 565. Righteous Tao, Eternal Life. Outer Sect city fell into silence. The cultivators who came to support beheld the magnificent scene on the heaven-repairing platform, and were utterly astounded, slowing their flying speed, their eyes fixed on Longqing. The sect leader knelt. When they turned their gazes towards Guan, they couldn't see his true face, even feeling a sense of dizziness. Seeing his master speaking on his behalf, Yi Song also came back to his senses. Yes, if he could seek the help of heaven-supporting ancestor, why couldn't his ancestor help his master? The moment he saw Chui Xianlin, Yi Song actually began to let go. It was only because the dead could not be brought back to life that he blamed others. It was his own fault, after all. He had not protected his sister well. Who else could he blame? Yi Song took a deep breath and facing Guan, he opened his mouth to say, "Thank you, ancestor, for capturing my enemy for me. I should avenge myself, please. Do not be disappointed in my master." He, as the sect leader, was indeed helpless, and I, as his disciple, failed to resolve his worries and constantly caused him trouble. It is I who have let him down. When Longqing knelt down for him, his hatred for Longqing completely dissipated. Recalling what Longtung had said, he felt utterly ashamed. Now he only wanted to kill Chui Xianlin, and then leave. Guan looked at him and said, "Running away won't solve the problem. You've caused so much trouble for the Supreme Sect. Do you think you can just walk away?" Wuxia world. Sight. After hearing this, Yi Song opened his mouth, but didn't know how to respond to that question. Though he had not intentionally killed anyone, his forceful actions along the way had undoubtedly caused immeasurable losses to the Supreme Sect. After taking revenge, have a chat alone with your master. Let him decide your fate. Having said that, Guan pushed Chui Xianlin, whose mana had already been restrained, towards Yi Song. Now as weak as a mortal, once Chui Xianlin regained his freedom, he immediately ran towards the distance. However, Yi Tsong appeared out of nowhere in front of him, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him high up. As Guan turned and walked away, he dropped a comment, "Zhuo Yijian, come with me." Hearing this, Zhuo Yijian became excited and hurriedly followed Guan's steps. Just a few steps away, the two disappeared from the heaven-repairing platform. With Guan gone, Yi Tsong could no longer restrain his desire to kill. "Chui Xianlin, give me back my sister's life." Yi Tsong roared with all his might, venting thousands of years of accumulated hatred and pain. His voice echoed between heaven and earth. Countless cultivators of the supreme sect looked up, their minds shaken as they gazed at the figure on the heaven-repairing platform. From a distance, they saw Zhuo Yijian sitting under a tree, stupidly smiling at a teapot on the table as if possessed. Longqing hesitated for a moment, but still walked towards Zhuo Yijian. Yi Tsong subconsciously looked around, searching for his ancestor. After taking revenge and reflecting on his ancestor's power, he felt shocked. He had thought heaven-supporting ancestor was the strongest, but heaven-supporting ancestor was powerless before his ancestor. This incident also awakened him. If he hadn't met his ancestor that day, he might have already died. He began to admire and aspire after his ancestor, a person so powerful yet not overbearing, fair, the kind of person he wanted to become. Seeing Longqing and his disciple approaching, Zhuo Yijian composed himself, resuming his inscrutable demeanor. Longqing approached him and bowed, asking, "Senior, where has my master gone? Has he left any instructions?" Zhuo Yijian stood up and said, "As for where he has gone off to, I can't investigate that, and he didn't leave any message." After hearing this, Longqing frowned. Zhuo Yijian spoke with a meaningful tone. "Sect leader, the next time you visit the heaven-repairing platform, don't just focus on the heaven-splitting axe. Actually, the most important thing on the heaven-repairing platform isn't the legacy, nor the sword intent, but the 2 words of righteous Tao he left behind." What is the righteous Tao? Different people have different understandings, but I think what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. The righteous Tao should lead the moral climate of the human world. Before the sound of his voice faded, Zhuo Yijian had already disappeared from the spot. After listening, Longqing fell into silence. Yi Tsong, looking at Longqing's back, his eyes full of shame. After being scolded and looking back at his master's actions, he suddenly felt that being a master was the hardest. Yi Tsong began to examine his own heart. What kind of person was he really? Did he deserve the 2 words righteous Tao? Heaven-supporting ancestor taught him that if one does not think for oneself, heaven and earth will annihilate them. Immortal cultivation is about striving, but seeing the ancestor today, he suddenly felt that cultivators must still have some convictions and principles. In thousands of years, he had seen countless powerhouses, but in terms of demeanor, no one could compare to his ancestor. The ancestor had only said a few words, but now that he thought back, each word was filled with deep meaning. Under the old tree, Longqing and Yi Tsong, each harboring their own thoughts, were reflecting on their own actions and pasts. Guan returned to the Taoist field of the beginningless and resumed his uneventful lifestyle, not caring about how Longqing would deal with Yi Tsong. Even if the supreme sect were to be destroyed, he didn't want to bother. At the age of 2, the Jinlan Immortal Mansion suffered an attack from space demons. Your eyes were gouged out, and misfortune was cast upon you. The powers in the mansion deduced that you could not live past 20 years. Unwilling to accept this fate, guided by the pavilion master, your parents decided to take you to Ling Mountain. What a tough start. Couldn't live past 20? Guan immediately tensed up. From Misty Immortal Court to Ling Mountain. Could Eternal Live's parents reach it within 20 years? He began to look forward to Eternal Live's ability to activate lifespan evolution, perhaps to break free from fate. The profound misfortune ancestor looked at you, giving you the choice. Would you choose to join Ling Mountain? Yes. Are you kidding? With only 2 years left to live, Guan couldn't care less. Surviving came first. Plus, the profound misfortune ancestor clearly wasn't a good person. Ling Mountain at least bore no grudge toward eternal life. You chose to join Ling Mountain, and the celestial Buddha personally accepted you as a disciple, preserving your eternal name, hoping that the hard luck you could truly achieve longevity. The profound misfortune ancestor gave you a few words of advice then left. You watched the back of the profound misfortune ancestor, reluctant to part. At 20, the misfortune within you erupted. Luckily, with the aid of the celestial Buddha, you temporarily suppressed the misfortune. Under the guidance of the celestial Buddha, you came before the Bodhi sacred tree, and the celestial Buddha transmitted to you a Buddhist spell, instructing you to chant scriptures and cultivate under the Bodhi sacred tree. At 23, your cultivation level made a breakthrough, gaining your own understanding of the Buddhist Tao. The rest of the hints were all about cultivation. Seeing that the celestial Buddha had made no moves against eternal life, Guan began to feel fondness for Ling Mountain. Keep at it, don't leave halfway to experience the world. Guan thought this way. For him, the opportunity from the reincarnation body was not the most important. He primarily relied on the experiences from the reincarnation body to enhance his understanding of the Great Tao. The higher the realm, the better he could comprehend the Great Tao. Bowing into Ling Mountain, Guan lacked not in cultivation resources. Focusing wholeheartedly on cultivation, he could surely reach a very high realm. The hints popped up very fast. At 300 years old, Guan successfully achieved nirvana. During this period, he faced several backlashes of misfortune, each time with the celestial Buddha intervening. He couldn't make choices staying under the Bodhi sacred tree the whole time. Guan could only watch. Reincarnation's time swiftly passed by. In a blink, Yongxing had already reached the age of 9,000. At the age of 9,000, you comprehended the Bodhi sacred tree, realized the Buddhist Tao, and nature's spiritual energy surged towards you, causing heavenly phenomena, attracting the celestial Buddha and other Buddhas to take notice. You successfully forged the Bodhi golden body, and your talent shocked Ling Mountain. To Guan, Ling Mountain must certainly hide a Taiching golden immortal. Such a formidable force yet to be shocked by the Bodhi golden body indicated it was no ordinary thing. At the age of 9,100, you attained enlightenment under the Bodhi sacred tree. The Black Profound Emperor suddenly attacked. Just as he was about to reach you, the celestial Buddha appeared and annihilated him. You inquired about the origins of the Black Profound Emperor, and after deliberation, the celestial Buddha said it was unpredictable, then left. You always felt there was some connection between the Black Profound Emperor and yourself, and you began to comprehend the way of cause and effect. At the age of 9,234, you entered the wandering immortal realm, and after a breakthrough, you felt your connection with the immortal Emperor's eye. You could trace the immortal Emperor's eye, recalling your early experiences. If not for the immortal Emperor's eye being taken and cursed with misfortune, your parents would not have died. You found the celestial Buddha, proposed your idea of seeking revenge, but the celestial Buddha forbade it, telling you to reach the Tao fruit realm before leaving Ling Mountain. Seeing the celestial Buddha block Yongsheng, Guan breathed a sigh of relief. A mere wandering immortal daring to seek revenge? Still ahead were various prompts about cultivation. Shenzhen, sitting in front of the great cauldron, saw that Guan was not reading but daydreaming, and could not help asking, "Guan, did you just have a breakthrough?" Guan glanced at her and asked, "Do you think my current realm is something I can easily break through? I've just gained new insights into the great Tao." He also would keep secrets from those around him. It was a benign lie. The path of cultivating immortality was filled with bizarre methods, and even those close could unintentionally leak his information. Shenzhen asked, "Just now when I was focused on the scene inside the cauldron, I saw a golden Buddha enduring the flames tempering. What do you think this signifies?" A golden Buddha? Guan grew curious. Just as his reincarnation body had forged the Bodhi golden body, Shenzhen saw a golden Buddha. Clearly there was some connection. "Continue to feel it, and when you can't see it anymore, discuss it with me in detail," Guan proposed thoughtfully. Xinjun nodded, and then returned her gaze to the great cauldron. Guan continued to pay attention to the reincarnation prompts. At the age of 57,046, you succeeded in crossing the tribulation and became a divine thought true immortal. At the age of 57,389, you mastered the great celestial thunder spell. The celestial Buddha was deeply pleased and bestowed upon you the precious red dust Buddha beads of Ling Mountain. At the age of 68,507, you succeeded in crossing the tribulation and became a free immortal. You awakened the divine skills of the immortal Emperor's Eye and eagerly wished to reclaim the immortal Emperor's Eye. Chapter 567. Stealing Heaven. Immortal Sect. Emperor of Eternal Life. Seeing the celestial Buddha take action, Guan suddenly thought of Yangxian's master, the ancestor of 10,000 swords. Even for a life filled with hardships, there are always people who can light it up, bringing hope and warmth. The prompt continued. After his defeat by the profound demon emperor, the Emperor of Eternal Life temporarily gave up on retrieving the immortal Emperor's Eye. He began to head towards the misty immortal court to fulfill the task assigned by the celestial Buddha. At the age of 91,181, you returned to the misty immortal court. You went back to the Jinlan immortal mansion, met with the pavilion master who was deeply saddened by your parents' death, began to console you, and you mentioned the task given by the celestial Buddha. The pavilion master didn't refuse but enthusiastically took you to the misty immortal palace. Along the way, you learned about the relationship between Ling Mountain and the Misty Immortal Court. The current lord of the Misty Immortal Court is a close friend of the celestial Buddha, who had once sent disciples to train in the Misty Immortal Court, and now it was time to take disciples from the Misty Immortal Court to train at Ling Mountain. You met the Misty Dao Emperor, feeling that this person was as profound and mysterious as the celestial Buddha. After some consideration, you took Fairy Yaoxian, a prodigy of the Misty Immortal Court, as your disciple. You then left with Yaoxian towards Ling Mountain. At the age of 91,182, you and Yaoxian arrived at the path of the Great Tao. You found a spirit lake and decided to seek enlightenment there. Seeing the Emperor of Eternal Life taking Yaoxian with him, Guan had a bad premonition. He always felt that Yaoxian would die, and that it would profoundly affect the Emperor of Eternal Life. Fortunately, things did not develop as he had anticipated. Decades later, both of them successfully returned to Ling Mountain, and the entire process did not give Guan a chance to choose. However, the same year they joined Ling Mountain, Yaoxian expressed her love to the Emperor of Eternal Life. Unlike the Emperor becoming a disciple of Ling Mountain, Yaoxian was just there to cultivate, and once she left, she would revert to being a disciple of the Misty Immortal Court. So the rules of Ling Mountain could not restrict her. This time, Guan was faced with a choice. Upon meticulously recalling past experiences and ascertaining that the Emperor of Eternal Life had not developed feelings for the Misty Dao Emperor, he rejected Yaoxian's love. Wuxia world. Sight. You rejected Yaoxian's affection. She was neither angry nor sad but instead chuckled, claiming that she would eventually shatter your Buddhist heart. After Yaoxian left, you turned back to the Bodhi sacred tree and asked the tree about your inner feelings. The years of cultivation continued. Even without the ability to snatch lifespan, the cultivation speed of the Emperor of Eternal Life was rapid. Although there were no choices to make nor severe trials to face next, Guan still watched with great interest. At 300,000 years old, he became the profound Yuan free immortal. At 1,000,000 years old, he became the heaven-encompassing free immortal. Without facing reincarnation tribulations, purely by cultivating beneath the Bodhi sacred tree, with frequent visits and praises for his exceptional talent from the Buddhas. At 1,004,236 years old, Fairy Yaoxian came to visit you. She said she was planning to venture onto the Taoist Emperor's path to achieve the title of Taoist Emperor. Knowing you are also pursuing this path, you chose to go with her. At 1,004,250 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian arrived at the path of the Great Tao. Fairy Yaoxian took out a magical treasure bestowed by the misty immortal court to pursue the celestial Dao destiny. As you sought and debated the Dao, you discovered that Yaoxuan's cultivation was not weaker than yours, which surprised you. At 1,004,367 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian encountered an attack from a Dao seeker from the Taisher Great World. After a great battle, you noticed a new type of destiny gathering on you, causing a deeper understanding of the Daoist Emperor to emerge. At 1,004,405 years old, Fairy Yaoxian had successfully defeated 10,000 Dao seekers pursuing the title of Daoist Emperor, achieving it ahead of you. At 1,004,423 years old, having defeated 10,000 Dao seekers pursuing the Daoist Emperor title yourself, the celestial Dao destiny gathered around you, and you achieved the title of Supreme Grade Daoist Emperor, soaring in your cultivation. At 1,004,576 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian unexpectedly met your mentor, the ancestral master Xianyi. You were delighted. However, during your reunion, the ancestral master Xianyi suddenly attacked you. With the help of Yaoxian, the two of you united were still no match for him. He captured Fairy Yaoxian, forcing you to dissolve your Bodhi golden body, threatening to obliterate Yaoxuan's divine soul. Whether you choose to dissolve your Bodhi golden body. The prompt finally arrived. Master Xianyi indeed harbored ill intentions. After all, this man had killed the Emperor of Eternal Live's father, and sent the Emperor to Ling Mountain, likely hoping to use Ling Mountain's power to free the Emperor from his misfortune. After so many years of acquaintance with Fairy Yaoxian, and venturing the path of the Great Tao together, even without the presence of love, Fairy Yaoxuan's place in the Emperor of Eternal Live's heart was undoubtedly significant. As Guan hesitated, he suddenly noticed Shenzhen's condition seemed a bit unusual. Shenzhen was still sitting in front of the great cauldron but was lost in a trance, her eyes empty, as if she were having a terrible nightmare. Guan could hear her heart's voice. Guan's expression turned peculiar, feeling this was absurd. How could this be? He found Shenzhen's heart's voice was very suitable for the predicament Fairy Yaoxian was in. Could Guan have a reincarnation connection with Fairy Yaoxian? Guan thought for a moment, and decided to take a gamble. He bet that the Celestial Buddha would take action. Compared to the profound demon emperor, the Celestial Buddha was his true master. You choose to release your Bodhi golden body yourself. Watching you dissolve your Bodhi golden body, Fairy Yaoxian was distraught. She broke through the suppression of the profound demon emperor, severely injuring him. Destiny surged insanely towards Fairy Yaoxian on the path of the Great Tao. Several powerful figures rushed to the scene. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, the profound demon emperor tried to flee but was annihilated by Fairy Yaoxian using great divine power. Turning to ashes, man, Fairy Yaoxian, is that fierce? Because you dissolved your Bodhi golden body, your Tao practice was unstable, and your divine soul was disordered. Before you lost consciousness, you saw Fairy Yaoxian flying towards you. At the age of 1,732,121, you finally woke up. You found yourself in a dim world with a bonfire beside you. Shockingly, you saw the figure of the profound demon emperor. Instinctively wanting to attack the profound demon emperor, you then discovered you had no Tao practice. The profound demon emperor did not kill you, but instead explained why he took your immortal emperor's eye. It turns out the immortal emperor's eye is a supreme divine skill from the primordial emperor domain. Even if its possessor perishes, the immortal emperor's eye can reincarnate through reincarnation rules. Your immortal emperor's eye's predecessor had offended the celestial court. Once the immortal emperor's eye matures, the celestial court would notice. So the profound demon emperor took your immortal emperor's eye to protect you. The misfortune on you was not his doing but a remnant curse from your immortal emperor's eye's predecessor. A curse that even reincarnation couldn't dissipate. After knowing the truth, you fell into self-doubt, believing that your parents died because of you. You also found out that the profound demon emperor comes from the primordial emperor domain. Seeing the mark of the immortal emperor's eye on you, he coveted it. At the age of 127, 74633, celestial Tao golden light descended. The celestial court sent celestial gods and celestial generals to attack, sealing the cosmic plane to prevent your escape. You were trapped in a fierce battle. Under the suppression of the heavenly Tao, even the immortal emperors I couldn't help you escape. Just as the immortal gods were about to execute you, the celestial Buddha broke through the universe and forcefully rescued you, suffering severe injuries himself. At 127,746,634 years old, the celestial Buddha sent you to the river of cause and effect, instructing you never to step out again. You gazed at the departing silhouette of the celestial Buddha, remaining silent for a long time. At 127,746,656 years old, you encountered the great cause and effect steel within the river of cause and effect, and you began to comprehend the great cause and effect steel. Sure enough, it collided with the celestial court. Guan was surprised that the celestial Buddha could actually contend with the celestial court, even severely wounded, and capable of rescuing the Emperor of Eternal Life, which sufficiently demonstrated the strength of the celestial Buddha. At the same time, the Emperor of Eternal Life also displayed terrifying strength, merely an innate golden immortal, yet able to rival the immortal gods. The celestial spirit gods, celestial extreme gods, and gods of destruction that Guan had previously encountered all possessed the cultivation level of a heaven-balancing golden immortal, and even if that celestial punishment god had just ascended, at the very least he was of the cultivation level of an innate golden immortal. Keep in mind that the Emperor of Eternal Life did not rely on the ability to evolve through lifespan. His greatest reliance was the immortal Emperor's eye. At 127, 747, 5897 years old, through the great cause and effect steel, you discovered that you were not your true self, which plunged you into confusion. At 127,747,004 years old, you accepted the cause and effect of the self, feeling that such truth might actually be a good thing. You could not save Fairy Yaoxian, but a stronger version of you might be able to. You took out a strand of hair that Fairy Yaoxian had left behind, and began to pursue its cause and effect. At 127,901,546 years old, you located the positions of other identities within the cause and effect. Unable to find the true self, you took Fairy Yaoxian's hair, and merged it into the great cause and effect steel, choosing to fall within the great cause and effect steel. You have perished, and your path has dissipated. Reincarnation has ended. The end. Guan had not expected that the life of the Emperor of Eternal Life would end in such a manner. He did not leave the Taoist field of the beginningless, but instead prepared to receive the memories of the heritage right there.